did yesterday? You know what I was thinking about an hour ago? If you would just know, he said, if you would just know me, you would know that it's not even a question. I'm so unworthy and inadequate. And in many ways, it's I think, the Yetzer Hara of today's generation, at least a big part of it. I don't see today the problem as people having big egos. I think every big ego you see today is just a manifestation of profound insecurity, profound fear. I once heard from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he said that the Yetzer Hara of this generation is 4 words: Mi ani umani. The sense of who am I and what am I? I'm a shmata, I'm a doormat, I'm a rag, I'm a nobody. Am I really capable? In his words, do I really think I'm capable of...
Jane, how you doing, baby? Do me a favor. I went looking for your email address, and a couple of days ago I found it, and I was looking through all my emails. I can't find it. Could you just tag me? Hey, here I am right now, so I can send you some stuff. But what we're talking about tonight, were you on this morning's show? Because tonight we're talking about just what this gentleman here is saying.
Am I really capable, in his words, do I really think I'm capable of being a home for the divine presence, or as you call it, infinity? Not me. You know what I did yesterday? You know what I was thinking about an hour ago? If you would just know, he said, if you would just know me, you would know that it's not even a question. I'm so unworthy and inadequate. And in many ways, it's I think, the Yetzer Hara of today's generation, at least a big part of it. I don't see today the problem as people having big egos. I think every big ego you see today is just a manifestation of profound insecurity, profound fear. I once heard from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he said that the Yetzer Hara of this generation is 4 words: Mi ani umani. The sense of who am I and what am I? I'm a shmata, I'm a doormat, I'm a rag, I'm a nobody. Am I really capable? In his words, do I really think I'm capable of being a home for the divine presence, or as you call it, infinity? Not me. You know what I did yesterday? You know what I was thinking about an hour ago? If you would just know, he said, if you would just know me, you would know that it's not even a question. I'm so unworthy and inadequate. And in many ways, it's I think, the Yetzer Hara of today's generation, at least a big part of it. I don't see today the problem as...
I see that in every leader right now. Political leader. Look at all those chumps. They can't say anything straight. When all of the mega Republicans were asked about how they felt about law and order and respect for police. Oh, it's most important. We need that. And they said, what about the 300 guys who got let loose of the 1,500 that were put in jail for the January 6th situation? And they said, well, that was free speech, and they murdered a couple of cops, and they beat others up so bad they committed suicide, and hundreds were put in the hospital. We have to move forward. We don't want to talk about that, but we do want to investigate the Democrats for what they did going after Donnie and all those people when they did the congressional hearings. That was weaponizing the. So that's kind of what that guy was talking about, right? And why are they doing that? Because, and this is something most people don't even talk about, there is a hidden hand that's underneath all of the geopolitics and what's going on this planet. And it's basically what this guy's talking about. Oh, this is part of what
Hi, everyone. You're going to need some great recipes like my cranberry cocktail meatballs. Now, we're going to start with 2 pounds of ground pork rinds.
Yeah.
No added sugar or ketchup. Minced garlic. Then some soy sauce. Then we're going to add in our eggs. Then some chopped fresh rosemary. And then finally some black pepper. We want to get all those ingredients incorporated. When they have picked up ET crap coming in, they'll switch it on. When you look at them into 2 general area, you have advanced physics, and these are things that you can think of that are very 3D, 4D, ARVs, electromagnetic devices, programmed life forms that are robotic creatures that are bio-nano genetics. By the way, the state-of-the-art lab for that is Dulce. Cannot get to it by being anywhere near Dulce. There's a connector from Los Alamos underground and also some other UGVs. We'll get into that in a moment where the underground system is connected. But these are the ones that are really where the action is, trans-dimensional physics, both passive and active. Now, the reason I divide these into passive and active systems is that the passive systems are for intelligence gathering and spycraft. The active systems are for disruption and staging things. Does that make sense? So as we look at
this is stuff that I saw in the 70s when I was out there in the West working on high voltage transformers for all these folks. And I never wanted to know what they were doing. I was just getting paid a lot of money to tune up transformers to deliver a power current at a specific designated commodity, right? And the guys I was working for, they make a lot of money. They paid me really ridiculously well. And I got to see a lot of stuff, talk to a lot of people, but I wasn't in the loop, right? And there were a number of times that, you really know what you're doing. You want to be part of this, blah, 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 blah. And I said, nope, I'm just doing my job. And we appreciate that. We like guys like you who just want to take the money and go. And that's what I did. But I kept stumbling further into stuff, and I saw this in 1972. I saw this. I was sent out. The chuckleheads put a bunch of towers in and put the wire in and straight down to a distribution terminal, and that's what we wired. And we took that into where there was a very specific location on a test range, and there was a tractor trailer, right? Just a trailer, and out of it came pipes, and the pipes went over about 100 yards to these transformers, and we took the power that we just brought from the distribution to there, put it in there, tuned up the thing, and there was like a test manual on what to do, checklist, right? And we had a radio telephone, and so we did our job. We had a time thing. We get it done by Tuesday by 2 p.m. Then make the phone call, which we did. They said tomorrow morning we're gonna you guys stay there, camp out there, and you read the book, and we're gonna go through the protocol, and you're gonna get an extra $10,000 just to do that, right? And so we said, everyone said sure. We kind of were signed up for this, and we did the protocol. We did it over the, did this, check A, check B, C, okay, hit the button. We hit the button. The top of the tractor trailer popped open, and out came a beam. I don't know even what it was made out of. Was it a microwave? Was it photonic? Or what was it? Who knows? But what happened was, all the hair on and all these guys had long hair. I had long hair too. And it stood straight out, and all the hair on our skin stood straight out. And some guys, started vomiting. Other guys were, just, not having a good day. About 4 of us, the 2 Mexicans, me, and this other guy who wasn't totally a tweaker, we kind of just stepped back, and we could hear the phone, the guy screaming on the phone, "Turn it off, turn it off." So we turned it off, but nothing stopped. We went to the main breakers, nothing stopped. I took out the fuses, nothing stopped. Took out the tuning forks of the transformer, nothing stopped. Now, the 2 miles of cable that we put up, we didn't tie down into the insulators. That was part of the protocol. And we had it set up so we could pull it out. So we got in the truck, wouldn't start. And this is before, I mean, these trucks had carburetors, nothing, no semiconductors, but wouldn't start, wouldn't get a spark. So we went up and protocol said we were supposed to leave our vehicles half a mile apart. And we got about 2 miles running as fast as we could, got into a vehicle and started. We drove about 12 miles, and we hit the, the knife switches to the high voltage, and then went to the next one and hit the knife switches of that, and then we pulled out that cable. So there's no cable, and we then went to where the distribution was and pulled the knife switches on that. And then slowly that beam, the beam went, when we took that last knife switch, the beam went, but it was a sound, you couldn't hear anybody talk. It was just like this like 10 amps, but a different frequency. And it was beyond belief. Dr. Bidnoff. So Dr. Bidnoff just kept popping up in my life. It just was more bizarre than. So this is
passive systems. You're
Steve Greer.
The sort of things that if you were to develop electromagnetic interdimensional spycraft, and it's way past PRISM or the Monroe Institute. When I say way past PRISM was the Snowden revealed NSA eavesdropping thing. Those are using electromagnetic linear. And these are systems that, as I mentioned, have electromagnetic assisted remote viewing into the conscious realm. And those allow spycraft to take place free of any tap or electromagnetic monitoring of telecommunication, what's called signals intelligence. Not necessary. And this is why everyone who works with Mooney.
So Steve is great. All this stuff is real, right? And go back to a number of my stories where I talk about Looking Glass, where they had one of the reasons why we went into Iraq in '91 was to pull up all this ancient technology, right? The Germans and the French discovered it. They were digging it up and weren't sharing it with us. So we sent in the Fifth Army. Most of the army didn't go into Baghdad, didn't go anywhere. They just straight over there. And we got the permission of Mr. Iraq, Saddam. We did that. I mean, we took out that one. These guys were coming back from Kuwait. And we just waxed them with A10s to show, we took out about a fifth that was armored. All the armored vehicles he sent into Kuwait, they were rushing back into Iraq. And we bombed out the first one, bombed out the last one, took the other 700 vehicles and just turned them into Swiss cheese, and killed about 5,000 soldiers in like less than 10 minutes. And then Saddam said, "Okay, do whatever you want." So we went up there and pressed the gun up to the the German and the French heads and said, "Listen, we'll share, but we're in on it. We own it. We got it. We're taking it." Right? So they did. And the only thing they did in Iraq, really, in Baghdad, was they went to the museum and they took all the artifacts that were like the driving manuals of that. Right? That was 91, right? And that was Looking Glass. And that worked up into 2012 until Looking Glass said, "Sorry, can't tell you anything more."
first start working with me, they go, oh, we need to set everything encrypted, and we need this. And I said, don't bother. By the time the thought has left your cerebral cortex, it's been grabbed by these technologies. Now, one of my military advisors for many years was a naval commander, and he, back when the White Oaks Naval Facility was operative, it's closed now in Maryland, he saw a device that was called a white noise space-time electromagnetic extraction system. And what that was is that it was a device that could target anywhere, any volume of space, say the volume in this room, and say the device is there near Bethesda in Maryland. They could target the volume of this room and monitor anything going on now or that happened here last night, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago, 1,000,000,000 years ago. It's called the white noise of space-time. The mystics call it the Akashic record. So encoded within the fabric of space-time is everything that has ever happened is still there as a standing energy waveform that can be extracted by this system. And that was in the 70s, and it had been fully operational long before he got there. Called the white noise space-time extraction. Okay, you understand what that is? So yeah, so it can target it, but it's actually pulling events and information and intelligence out of the structure of space-time and can target any volume anywhere. So this is why I say, Snowden, I told his lawyer,
So that meant that this stuff was around in the 1940s.
And the conventional NSA.
That's why World War II was a joke.
Google and Facebook.
That's why the Nazis and the Americans and the British and the French were all in on it.
Forget about encryption.
So were the Russians.
Secrecy. Ain't gonna work.
And they let all the people die who they wanted to die.
Now, and then there are others that have been developed or they're trying to develop so-called Project Red Light. That's based on studying extraterrestrial communication devices that can also look into the future or get a sense of future events. Those are in development and are less precise, but that's only because all future events are only probabilities. So let me explain what I mean by that. Everything that we think and do at this moment is changing the future. And so if in this point in time you see an event in the future, by the time you've seen it, if you've shared that information, it can change that event. Does this make sense? So now it may have a 95% likelihood, it may have a 99%, it may be a 80%, but it's not going to be 100%. The ones looking in the real time now or backward, like the white noise extraction systems, those are extremely accurate. Okay, so those are all past.
So go look up Stephen Greer. He's got a ton of these on YouTube, and they're all really great. He's doing a great job. He's getting it out. He's doing his best because he is actually walking a tightrope because he wants disclosure. I mean, that's really what he wants. He wants to be known as the disclosure guy. So. So Bittenoff was working on that. First time I bumped into Bittenoff was I was being on the down low for my draft board, right? I didn't burn my draft. I mean, I had been involved, by the time I got drafted, I was 18, right? And going up to college, and college was a waste of time, and I really didn't want to do it. And it wasn't even fun. I mean, the first 3 semesters I screwed around and did all kinds of stuff, and that was okay. And had a couple of girlfriends, and every girlfriend I had, it was not like all the girls I knew in New York City. Women, the girls I knew were women. Even when I was in 3rd grade, Kim Romano and Debbie, they were women, And so it was like, it was like watching Happy Days, but it was more dangerous. So I said, okay, good luck with this. So I had to, and I said, well, I'm not going to burn my thing or go to Canada or do any of that. I'm just going to be hard to find. If they can't send me the letter, it's not my fault. So I just kept, couch, I went to New York, and I was, still working and hanging with friends and staying at people's. But even though New York City is 18 million people, they can kind of find you by what you do and the patterns you leave, right? So it was still a very like a rat's maze and ant farm. And so I kept hearing people say, "Some guys in suits were looking for you, Al." And so I said, I got to expand myself. So I started hanging out with all my old prep school buddies who were in colleges. So I went to first I went to Amherst, and then winter came. It was too fucking cold, so I went down south, and I went to some friends at UNC, but I had a lot of buddies at Duke. So I showed up at Duke, and they didn't have computers and had ID cards. If you were in Duke and you were white male, you belonged there, right? So I was hanging out in a friend of mine's fraternity, and I was having a good old time. And they had a toga party, and I met these girls who all just fell in love with me. And they said, we need a pool boy. And I said, really? And they said, yes. So I went, and they had an indoor pool, right? And they had their house made the boys' house look like, right? And there was a woman there, the den mother, right? And she was one hot tamale, and she was in her 40s, and she thought I was the best thing since cream cheese. And so she actually put me in the sorority. I was the sister, right? And I was just their their piece of bologna to match their Susie cream cheese, and I was having a great old time. And she was the head archivalist at the old Duke Library, where all their rare books were and all the research stuff was. And so she goes, and she took me down to, the Goodwill or some store like that, and bought me a nice pair of pants, a couple of nice pair of pants, a nice pair of shoes, underwear, socks, nice shirt, a couple of bow ties, and she trimmed my everything down and she got me a pair of, I couldn't really, I needed reading glasses even then, but I would just blur or sometimes use a magnifying lens reading. Anyway, so she got me a thing helping her archive documents, right? And so she got me a carrel in the old part of the old library where nobody went to, and it was up on the second floor. And it had it was a corner, part of the corner was like the corner office, right? And it had all these beautiful windows that faced down into the main quad. And, it was all beautiful trees and grass and kids hanging out and the sun always coming in. It was just a beautiful thing. Had a beautiful couch I could sleep on. Had a little fridge and a little hot plate, and it was great. And the big Carol tables with the lights on them. Right? Whenever you see a movie of an old library, or like in Indiana Jones movies, when he's at college and he's running through the library, it had these big tables, lights. Those are called Carol desks, where you put out books. So you don't bend pages. You just so you don't. If you have a book and you're going to use it for more than a second, you basically put it there and treat it nicely, right? So anyway, so that's what I was doing, and then this girl one day comes in, and she is like, just like the lady who I met selling vacuum cleaners, and this is before then. This is like 1968, 69. And when I met the robot girl was 1972. So this girl, she was like, and she just came in. She just like didn't even say hello or anything. And I had my back, I had one of those roll up desks, but I had a nice, like the chair I'm sitting in, one of those nice rolly, you know, office chairs. Anyway, so I'm sitting there and looking at a document. I had these books all opened up and got, little slips of papers and notes. And she goes, I hear someone say, "Is this your work?" Right? There's nobody else here. Like for way, 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 there's nobody there. And I turn around and there's this really amazing looking woman, about 22 to 25. And she's on all fours on the desk reading my stuff straight down, right? And the windows pour out her back, and she's wearing no underwear, no brassiere, just this kind of very thin, springy kind of flowery dress that's like mid thigh length, and she's up on the table barefoot, and she goes, and I hear, "Is this you?" I didn't hear her come in. I didn't hear her get up on the table. I didn't hear her do anything. I just heard her say, "Is this your work?" And I turned around, and there she is, and I'm like looking straight down the barrel, and I'm like speechless. And she goes, "This is amazing. You really got a handle on time, space, and dimensional coordinate energy fluxes. Scalar technology." I said, and I'm just like, "What? You understand?" "Oh yes, I've like been working on these parameters within the construct of being able to telepath um, time and space and people's thoughts." Like, just what he was talking about. Just what he was talking about, right? And she goes, "My boss would love to talk to you." And I go, "Boss?" And she goes, "Yeah." And she gets off the table. She goes, "Can I sit down?" And I said, "Sure." And I go over to the refrigerator. I said, "You want some grape juice?" That's what I. Yep. So we're just before they had bottled water, and that was at least one Coca-Cola drink they had that I could get from the pantry of the sorority. Anyway, so she goes, "Yeah, yeah," and we're talking, and she goes, "My boss will," because we. Then I told her that I came from New York and I was part of Theosophical Society and I was part of this organization and I was part of the um, Brookings study and a few other things. And she goes, "Oh man, he would just love you." And so, because I was building in New York for the Theosophical Society's sensory deprivation tanks, right? And the ones I was building were not just a bathtub with a roof over it, and so it was dark, and you filled it full of really salty water, so you float on top. Now I had these things that were really large, so you couldn't really touch the sides, deeper than a bathtub. So once you got floating, you really were floating. And the canopy had ergonomic, oh no, it's a term for it, but it's acoustic tiles that are made out of a certain type of foam and cut in different shapes to drown out any kind of noise. Right? So it's like you can't even hear yourself think or breathe or your heartbeat. And then I had a Faraday cage around it, so no electromagnetic anything could affect you. And so that's pretty sophisticated. It's a sensory deprivation tank. And it was truly amazing what you could do with that. A guy named Dirk George and his girlfriend slash wife, I think, was the princess. She was Oriental. And they were aliens, right? And they were funding this whole thing um, out of the Theosophical Society and the Brookings Institute and the Council for Foreign Relations. And that was in the 60s. Like when I was 16, like 66, 67, when I was Allen Ginsberg's roommate on 9th Street and Avenue B. Anyway, so this girl takes me to her boss, and her boss is Dr. Bittenoff, right? And he basically um, is working for an entity, a corporation. It's called the SEAL Corporation. And he said this was a, what was the term he used? Covert, undisclosed covert operation, a corporate undisclosed, covert operation, something totally sealed, right? Couldn't get at it anyway except from the inside, and this SEAL Corporation, right? And what they were doing all this kind of energy work, but what they were really looking for was to make a Captain America, right? So in the scene when Cap gets in there and he's a little shrimpy guy and he's in the box, sensory deprivation tank, and he gets with all those needles like a pincushion, and then hit him with the juice, that's scalar energy. And so that's what these guys were going at. That's what's amazing about these movies, is that they are constantly giving you, the audience, the heads up of all of this stuff, because they have to, because it's all around us. And unless they put it out like that, somewhere that information is going to pop into somebody's head, and then they might have a problem with that. But when it's, oh, we saw that on the TV or on a movie, and oh, it's just a comic book. That's what it's about. Got busy. It's all right. You did it once, so it's all politique. That's right. It is. Akashic record. Go into state. Yeah, that's right. These guys have all these machines to do it when all you got to do is meditate, right? That's what I learned from my master in Putney at the Shinto temple, right? And so anyway, there's Dr. Bidnoff, and he's, this girl goes, "Oh, Doc, you have to talk to this guy. He builds, sensory deprivation tanks that are shielded." And he goes, "Shielded? Yes." And he knows about, you should read his dissertation on scalar waves. And he goes, "Scalar waves?" Right? So he sits me down, and we have a real nice talk, and he goes, "Can you build any of this?" I said, "Sure I can, Duke has some really great shops. I mean, they do a lot of research here, and they have a lot of people. If you can garnish access to those facilities and get resources and get some, technical people like bench folk, and I'm sure they got a bunch of them around here, and you can sign them up with a non-disclosure form, and me too. Sure." And he goes, "So," and it says, "How much do I want?" I said, $5,000 a pop. He goes, he doesn't even blink. Not even, it's in the budget. I said, right. So we do that, and we have a fun time. He's got a great sense of humor. He cooks really well. Has a great. He always has a great collection of booze. Kind of a party animal for a old guy. I was like, I was like 19 or 20 then, and. Anyway, and this girl, like I said, is 22 to 25, and so I'm living at the sorority, and he goes, so I signed a non-disclosure thing. He says, "You're not, don't tell people, just do what you're doing." I told him my whole story. He said, "No problem," And so we spend a nice 6 months together. That young lady becomes my sweetie. Take her over to all the girls, and the girls love her. The matron loves her, and she becomes not a part, but like me, a pet. And so we have they give us a nice big room, like 3 girls are supposed to stay in, and so we stay there. And Dr. Bidnoff, I think, is dropping some cash on the old lady, and we love the indoor pool. Dr. Bidnoff comes over because he tries to stay very down low. So he's not really, right. He's there using Duke's facilities, but he's not being very public about his presence, right? So he has a little house off down from the campus, and he gets a limousine to and from, and but he starts to go swimming in the girls' pool, and these girls have to keep everything, boys and him and with me, and no, that's not supposed to be happening, so it's not happening. And guys, that's what's going on in the world. That's what's always going on in the world. Nothing has changed. Things have always been as screwed up as they are today. They're just becoming more evident because things are changing in the universe. This whole way of keeping it on the down low and keeping humanity's higher self, corrupted. You're a corrupted being. Religion tells you. I just had a nice little theologic conversation with some folks, that are Baptists, the deacons, so I'm hanging here and they're part of it. And they're all right guys. And so I was one of the guys, he's got the same problems I do. And I said, here, a couple of weeks ago, here, just take a bottle of water here, put a teaspoon of um, you know, baking soda and drink this. So he does. And his arthritis and his pains, they seceded. The inflammation has gone down, right? So he eats more donuts, and so anyway. And I would eat as many donuts as he does. I just don't keep them around. I would drink as much as sodas as he does, but I don't. I don't start the first one. Like so, I had one today, like 2 or 3 hours ago, and my body's. I want another one. I want another one. I want another one. So I'm drinking my baking soda and water. And yes, that you know levels out this. Anyway, so I was talking to that guy about that, and then he goes, "Why are you always in a wheelchair? Why what are you lazy?" And I said, "No, it's because I can't walk on concrete." He goes, "Oh, my mother had that." So he had someone he could relate that to. She wasn't lazy. This guy's he's like he can't slow down. He can't stop. So his mom was 10 times what he is. So he realizes that walking on concrete. Yeah, my mom had a real problem with that. She did a lot of that. She had to work someplace that was on concrete. She'd be laid up for a week, right? So he goes, oh, okay. So that was like he could. So that was one leg. So he's not lazy, right? And I do all this stuff around here, and I don't really blow my horn or say I'm in a park. I don't do any of that. But I do have my ways to get things happening, right? Because there were a lot of what are known in the organizational structure books, a Stalinist obstruction. Somebody who just says, yeah, I want it done this way, that kind of person, right? And I basically, all those people I went and talked to mano a mano, and we sat and talked, and I listened to everything they had to say, and I didn't say that they were wrong, and I just kept talking and talking and telling stories and talking and talking. And then after the first time, I came back a second time to go, you're the only person who listens to me. I mean, really listens, understands what I'm saying, knows what I'm feeling. How do you do that? I said, well, let's talk some more. So I just did that to pretty much about 10 people who were really good. They had great, they were important people not to be gotten rid of. And that's usually what happens. A big fight happens, and then they get thrown out, or this person gets broken, or someone goes away mad, takes their toys. And basically, I just been around here making sure that doesn't happen in a very low key, unassuming kind of way, right? And that's why they call me the caretaker now, because I'm just here taking care. And little things happen, like there was a blinky light and on this building, and I said, we should go look at that. And it was just a storage building. No one ever went into it. And I said, well, I'll just leave it alone. I said, no, let's, let me, dig around in my car. Let me find a screwdriver, a flashlight, and one of my little testers. So I always got whatever I need in my car, right? So I dig around to find it. And we drive up there, and lo and behold, there was in a junction box, two wires that were just, the wire nut come off, and they're just doing this, right? Sparking in the junction box. When they said this was an electrical fire, that's what happens. Some guy just stuck the two wires together, threw on a wire nut, and went away. Right? Years later, it pops off. The two wires really aren't twisted together. There's no tape on it, and the building burns down. And the guy who's always complaining about everybody else, was there with me, thinking like, "Oh, this guy," and he goes, "How do you even know that was there?" I said, "Because that light was blinking." "Well, that light was blinking, but this box is over here." I said, "Well, the light goes down to this switch. This is a three-way switch. Three-way switch goes the other side of the building where that other door is, and above it, it goes straight into that junction box, right? So the first place you look at is a junction box." I had a ladder, and I kind of hobbled up there, took the cover off, and the two wires just went. I had a wire nut. I took my Kleins and just twisted the wires together really good, put a wire nut on it, put some tape on it, then took every connection that was in that box, did the same thing because they were all ready to do the same thing. And the guy was just, "Wow, you really know what you're doing." I said, "Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've known you 20 years. I've done all kinds of work around, and pretty much I know what I'm doing." And so now I have respect, and especially when we started talking about theologic stuff, and all he can do is quote a verse. He doesn't know its context. And then I would talk about the context. But those are like parables. I said, "Yeah, they're stories." Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I do now. I kind of just don't really have a job. I live on $400 a month, and not a problem. I mean, this sleeping on concrete thing is getting a little tiresome, and hopefully the cold ain't going to be here. It's going to be other places. We're going to have some wild. But winter is not over, kids. Right? We're going to have some serious weather. Now we've had bad weather here. It's been ridiculous. We've had ice and snow, and the snow hasn't gone away. And now it rained today, so all the snow and ice went away. But it's it left the road slushy, and tonight's going to be 20. So if I get home before it gets dark. So tomorrow it's supposed to be another, like maybe 40, right? And maybe a little more rain and then sun, right? And then I'll get rid of all of it. So I'll go visit the deep green, see if I can get in, because the two roads to get into my thing, and the county road is gone, so I have to drive 40 miles. It used to take 8 miles. I have to drive 40. Right? So, anyway. So I'm going to go check that out tomorrow. And Space 1999. Yep. Seems to be a cycle of sacrifice. Yes. And that's kind of where we have been put. Meaning, we had, come here. There's so many myths about, how we got here, And in the Bible, it starts out, and in the beginning, and God's made in our, we're made in God's image and likeness, And what people don't realize is that there's a Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit's inside of us. So God is inside of us. And we're not quite prepared to be that. Because if we were, if it was brought out onto us like that, we would end up like Shakespeare's play. It's where this king gets put on an island because he's really smart, and the people need him, but he's a real asshole, so they get rid of him. They don't kill him, and he has Enkidu, his buddy, takes an animal and gives it a consciousness. And then they made it into the movie they made in the 1940s. What was Forbidden Planet based on? let's see, 1956 Forbidden film, Forbidden Planet, is loosely based on William Shakespeare's The Tempest. That's it. And so there were monsters from the meaning this great civilization, a technology, da 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 da. It had gone through the galaxies and seen everything, and you know, their biggest thing was to be able to just make a machine that they would think of something and bang go there. Yeah, they wouldn't even need the thing that Earl Grey warm. It wouldn't need that. So all of these films and movies and myths are all based on reality. And we'll go back to
those are all passive systems that, and there are many others, that have been developed since the 50s, 60s, 70s. Certainly by the 60s and 70s, these were all fully operational. Okay, so you're not going to learn this in your physics class or your government class at the college here, but you're learning it today, and I'm telling you the truth. Now, these are worrisome just because they're very unacknowledged special access project spy systems. These are where my bigger concern is. Right. And these active transdimensional systems deal with the ability to perturb or induce phenomenon from other realms and dimensions. I mentioned that a moment ago, where they could set up an electromagnetic vector into another dimension and cause a phenomenon to take place. That would not only fool everyone, but could be very injurious to the Earth. One of these systems, I've been told recently, has been deployed in the past to be set up over certain tectonic fault lines to induce earthquakes and earth changes. And these are actively being deployed. Very dangerous game being played. This is why these events coming are going to be not just natural, but man-made and natural. Keep that in mind as things start unfolding. They're in the hands of some of the worst elements possible, which is why I said 25 years ago, the disclosure of this subject and getting these technologies under the control of conscious, ethical people is of the utmost importance to the human future, and is an existential crisis that it is in the hands of the people it's in. They have had the ability to do teleportation since the 50s, maybe 40s. You've all heard the Philadelphia experiment. It wasn't actually in Philadelphia, it was in Rhode Island, but that was a cover story. But the long story short is the ability to cause an object to switch and fall out of one point in space and appear at another. That has been done fairly recently with particles in physics. It's been reported in mainstream physics journals. But what you need to know is through very high voltage and electromagnetic frequency field systems, it began to be studied and practiced and experimented with in the 40s and 50s. One of our disclosure project witnesses, Fred Threadfell, was up at a base up in Canada that was a classified Air Force facility where they had this big room, and it sounds so prosaic, but they had an ashtray. And the ashtray would be on a box, and it had this electromagnetic field, and it would dematerialize and rematerialize on another part of the base, and they could just teleport it back and forth. An ashtray. That was in 1953. So these sort of sciences, trans-dimensional physics and sciences, have been developed over the last 60, 70 years. At this point in 2018, they're extraordinarily well developed in the classified world, and they can stage pretty much anything they want, which is what they're doing. It also means they can materialize and dematerialize objects. They can weaponize these interdimensional portals, or so-called stargates. Now, this is the thing that is most concerning to me, is that all interstellar extraterrestrial civilization are crossing through these finer dimensions to get here. They're not going through linear solid space-time. But over the last
30, 40 years, they developed the ability to weaponize, say, a vector or a portal into these other dimensions, and then create a weapon system that can target other starcraft, other planetary systems, and what have you. This is very dangerous in the hands of people who have the intention to utilize them. And this is of great concern to all of us. The other are the satellite-based systems. Back in the 70s, I met the man who was a very brilliant electromagnetic engineer, had his own company in the Tampa, St. Pete area, who had developed what he called a neutrino light detector. These are detectors that are placed on satellites that can pick up an ET craft when it's coming out of interdimensional, transdimensional space-time into this dimension, and it leaves a certain signature.
You're finally on vacation, but can't help but worry that something isn't right back home with MyQ.
And it leaves a certain signature. And it's not conventional light. It's a neutrino kind of light scatter, but in the shape and form and vector of the spacecraft. That is then slaved, as they call, to weapon systems that are both in space on satellites and on the ground to target the ET craft and hit it with a very powerful electromagnetic weapon, which is how we've been causing these crash retrieval events to happen. Though you're not going through billions of miles or light years of space and getting here and running out of gas and crashing. I mean, or an electrical storm. They don't know how to maneuver through an 737s can go around electrical storms. They're being targeted with these weapons that are faster than the speed of light because they are what are called scalar or longitudinal. So a quick study in that. Wave, like light you're seeing, has a wave function, right? So the wave function is 186,000 miles per second propagating. Scalar or longitudinal, it's a point in a line, and it doesn't have a wave function, and it is a multiples of the speed of light. Those scalar systems or longitudinal systems have been developed since the 40s, 50s, 60s, and have been weaponized. That was what was in the little secret radar dome. The FBI memo that we got has now become the #1 viewed document on the FBI website, from the field agent to J. Edgar Hoover about the Roswell event, where it says apparently they switched on a, quote, new radar system, and these things crap. It wasn't radar the way you think of radar at Denver International Airport. That term radar, just so you know, is a euphemism used in unacknowledged special access projects to denote these sort of specialized pulsed electromagnetic weapon systems. And they call them radar.
And that during World War II was being developed by a facility that was called the RAD Lab, right? And my mentor, Billy Kluver, who was at the CFR, who ran Art and Technology House, he was there. He was one of the smart kids, and he was educated in the 20s, and he, hit all the great spots. He studied in England and France and Germany and Russia at all the great institutions of art and technology. And that's what he was all about, art and technology. And so, because he felt the strongest thing was culture, right? So he was my main, from 10 until I was 30, he was one of my main mentors, right? And he was, a really guy on the super inside of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's the guy who hooked me up with guy who wrote Hope and Tragedy. Dr. What was that guy's name? He was Gary, let's see, None Dare Call Conspiracy, Gary Allen. Gary Allen was his protege. What was that guy's name? Christopher? No. It'll pop into my mind. Anyway, so I hung out with those guys. So they were giving me everything on what was global politically, economically going on the down low, while Billy was taking me to the super exotic technologies, right? And my electrical protege or guardian angel or mentor, Grandpa Stahl, was Nikola Tesla's bench electrician who built all the devices and so Tesla was the guy who discovered zero point energy slash scalar wave technology and was in the 1890s he was ready to go industrial strength wireless electricity to anything. He said we're going to have electric cars, electric airplanes, electric everything that don't need wires, right? Free electricity to everything. It'll change civilization for the better. We won't have to have wars. I said, well, that's nice, Nick, but we can't make money on that. So they went with the Edison idea of wires and meters, right? So that's what has got us to where we are today, right? And so we're really at a so you got a guy like Stephen Greer who's really doing a great job on disclosure. He's not doing the pudding-head shit that the CIA. CIA, I think the one interesting thing that Donald Trump is going to do is get rid of the CIA, right? And get rid of the FBI and get rid of the Justice Department so something better can come. I mean, he's going to just destroy the governmental guardrails. And those guardrails were just basically to keep us in jail, right? And, saying is, you, the citizen, just stay here. We're going to give you TV and TV dinners and you'll love it, And so, no. No ABC. Sometimes you guys are so like, I'm such an old guy. So you say no ABC. I have no idea what that means. Got busy. I know what that was. It's all political. Yep. Going to state. Yep. Oh my God. Seems to be a cycle of sacrifice. Yep. And again, we'll go back to that one. That's why I keep rereading the stuff you guys say because we are here in these bags of water to suffer because we cannot grow alphabet companies. Yeah, we cannot grow without suffering. Our soul has to be tempered, right? And so we have to go through these cycles of incarnation, and we grow, we move forward, or we don't. We get stuck. We go backwards, right? But the major thing is to move forward, right? And that's what's happening. And there is structural strain on this whole civilization that we're in, and it's going to blow apart, and it's not going to be pretty, what I think is going to happen, Donald and Putin are going to have. Again, this is all scripted. None of this is just happening out of the blue, I mean, for Donnie to do everything he's done in just one frigging week, it's scripted, and it's just going to get weirder and weirder. And so he's going to go in there and try and strong arm Putin, and Putin is going to loft a 2 or 3 ICBMs with basic, EMP devices on board, or they have them up in space already, And again, it's not Russia doing this, it's a transnational organization, right? It's something just out of James Bond, where all the villains are in the hollowed out volcano in the Caribbean. It is that, and that's and again, that had to be put into a movie so we would be exposed to it. So when it happens, we can say, "Oh yeah, I saw that in the James Bond movie." That's why Mike Myers, did Austin Powers. It's so that's why you have to have a big outside the box picture of this, right? And the rush is on. Why? Well, because they're that incompetent. That's why we are getting a vortex storm around the Great Lakes. Oh no, shit, man. Um, like I said, the winter is going. This winter, people go, "Oh, global warming." No, we had to worry about the freaking ice age. You know, my buddies Art Bell and what's his name? The guy wrote Communion. They wrote a great thing called "The Day After Tomorrow," and it was just about this. Right? Everything is warming, warming, warming. Then ice age, because that warming stressed the nice, even Goldilocks balance between everything, and along with every 16,000, 20,000 years, the sun goes, they go, through these, the sun goes through cycles. One of these is a long cycle. And right now, all the planets are lining up. They haven't lined up yet, but they're getting there. Venus looks like it's another sun in the morning. Yeah, the day after tomorrow. Whitley, yep, Whitney, whatever his name, Whitley Strieber, and that's it. That's what's happening right now. And we want to go to Panama. Why? Because it's going to be warm there, right? We want to, we're making a big hoodoo with the guy in Costa Rica or that place where we get bananas, flowers, and coffee, Colombia. We, he didn't want. We were sending him like 200 crazy Hispanic people who we wanted to deport, and we're going to deport. And we had two C-17s around wanting to land. They just put them in there and sent them off without any kind of diplomatic discussion. And they said, "Okay, we're going to land. We're going to land." And I said, "No, you're not." And they sent up a few escorts to get them out of their airspace, right? And Donnie got livid about that, right? So he's put 50% tariffs on them, and Costa Rica says fine. Vietnam's having a real problem making coffee. We're one of the only people who are not having that problem, and Europe is dying for our coffee. So suck an egg, Carrot Head, And so he, Carrot Head came back with, well, we're going to use military, So this is all provocation, so we can have a big war and take over Central and South America, where North America turns into an iceberg, right? So, Canada and Mexico, and all of these things, again, these people from all of these countries, there are people, what I call the hidden hand or Hail Hydra or however you want to put it. And that's, Mr. Neon Husk does this, it's part of that Hail Hydra. And what's happening is we had this thing Looking Glass. And in 2012, when the Mayan calendar, last page, the last date, that's that. And the world was supposed to end. Well, what happened? There was a dimensional shift. And this thing called Looking Glass that could. Sorry, kids, this was made back then. Expiration date of today, end of Mayan calendar. This thing don't work no more. Sorry. And other things that Stephen was discussing there is starting to go little fritzy because we're in a new dimension, basically. Right? And there are a lot of, planetary folk who has come and visited us and done things. And there have been wars here, and all kinds of crazy shit that going on here for millions of years. And basically, this is just another ring of the circle. And that's why, they knew this was coming. And so they've been pushing with all of this craziness and why things just pop out of nowhere. I mean, like AI. I told you I should date this woman, Christine Barton, who is the smartest human on the planet. She invented they had computer graphics. They had to make an algorithm for every frame of the animated film. That was super. That was more time. It was like, but they'd want to say, "Oh, we have a video, a digital blah blah blah." And so she developed an algorithm where one algorithm could make a whole movie. You know, they could pass three-dimensional images from frame to frame to frame with one algorithm. She was getting her PhD like when she was 16, and she wrote that thing. And they said, "Oh, that's great. We're going to give you 3 doctorates, for the price of one, and we're going to give you like 70 grand for this, but we own it. You were just a grad student here, and we own this. And thank you very much. And by the way, we're going to get you a nice job." And they did. They got her a job with GE, and she was their head digital graphic. NBC wanted to go totally digital for their news and their this and their that. And that's when I met her, in just before in the late '70s, just before Ronnie Reagan was. And NBC wanted that. They wanted to have, because ABC had bought the Rudd Etra synthesizer, which was a really clunky device. It jittered through its animation. And so, and that Louise Etra was the brains behind that. But of course, they gave all the credit to her husband. And Louise was Christine's best buddy. And so I met Christine at a party. It was full of really Guy Nureyev, which is Michael Nureyev's brother, who's an actor who played the Mossad leader in Naval NCIS, right? That guy. That was Michael, and his brother was Guy. And Guy was like the 1970s version of Elon Musk. He was dumber than dog shit. His daddy was really rich. I think they came from a Iranian, Persian, or maybe even Saudi Arabian money, but somewhere over there, lots of money. And they were educated kind of here. And these guys were just, surfing from scam to scam. Now, Michael was a pretty good actor, so he got into that. And he got all these, really choice parts that weren't really hard, but they kept bringing, he was always in this film and that movie and this and that. And he was always kind of playing that guy, that Mossad, chief, or that CIA guy, or this guy. And so anyway, I knew Guy because I had a loft above him. That's where I had my loft at Pearl Street, in Edison's old first electric generating station, where he lit up Wall Street to excite the the Wall Street crowd to invest money into him. J.P. Morgan had him do that. And so I lived at the top, which was like the belfry. Was almost 3 stories tall, but it had these really sharp things, and it was up there that had all these big wheels that had big steam engine down below that sent a leather belt to the top, and then off of that rod they had other belts going down to different floors running generators, right? And Edison was really big into steam. If you've ever seen movies of New York City and the steam is rising from the streets, Edison has steam lines all over the place because they realized they built a couple of really big, steam boilers and had a big turbine there, but excess steam they could pipe all over the city and sell to landlords to heat houses and stuff like this. I mean, it's really archaic, New York City underground. So anyway, that's Guy Nureyev. So he was a guy who's trying to buy, sell, get involved in any whoop-de-doo computer thing. All those really great young innovators. That was him. And it was just like, I met a whole bunch of guys that were like Steve Jobs and Billy Gates and faceless Facebook and the guys from Do No Harm, Google, Alphabet, and they weren't. They were just young people who just knew enough about something to try and scam money, right? And he was the head number one. He was the guy who pointed people and got people hooked up, just like the guy who got Musk all hooked up, right? I forget his name is somewhere in my notes. Anyway, but he was one of the billionaires who was on the front seats at Donnie's swearing in. And he was a guy involved in PayPal and getting Musk to be the head of Tesla when he didn't even know who Nikola Tesla was or why they were called Tesla. It's like, I mean, it's just so right there. You see the guy, Zig Heil, it's like, he was in Europe last week going to all these conferences, and he was on Italian TV, and he was talking up the fascist, nationalist uh, Italian party that's seeming to come back again, and the girl, who is head of the EU part of the EU representative for Italy was sitting next to her. She just moved the table and just scooched as far away from him as she could get. Let's see. Oh, there's Mr. Light. They have already the time so many times. We are not actually in the time. Yeah, it's right that we believe we are in. Yeah, you got it. Near on everything is already or tampered with. Yeah, pretty much water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, yeah. All fluorescent lights, yes. Which fluorescent lights go, and so do LED lights do this. LED lights do it better. So fluorescent lights, we could go, they cycle on and off in the tube 60 times a second. Well, you don't really notice that. I mean, parts of your brain does, but you don't say, oh, look, the light's going on. It's flickering. No, it's not flickering. Sometimes if they change the frequency, which they do often, and power companies do this, they can change the frequency in such a way that they can get more watts out of the same amperage, right? So, and it burns out transformers and does a lot of bad things to the system, but they don't care because they know that system's going to be thrown out relatively soon anyway. And that's one of the things they're going to bring out this, just like AI came on the scene like that, right? And cycles. Let's go around again and again and again. Yep. Migraine from fluorescent lights, yes, and frigging LEDs. So back around 2006 or 7, somewhere around then, before the great crash of '08. So I was mostly being, in '03, I started being the savior of the desperate corporate lawyers. I would go in and negotiate for them, and they paid me ridiculous amounts. So I didn't have to work at all. I mean, 11 hours a year. I mean, 11 days, 11 months, 11 weeks, excuse me, 11 weeks. I knew I'd get it right one of those times. 11 weeks a year, I could make more money than I ever had, right? Didn't need it. Well, if you work all the time, you'd be a millionaire. Don't want to be a millionaire. Didn't need to be a millionaire. 5 figures out was good enough for me. Anyway, especially when they paid all my expenses, put me up places, kept me entertained for weeks after because I was so fun, and they might need me soon. So they didn't want me to be booked by anybody else. So I had a pretty good life for those almost 12 years. So anyway, I still did electric work because, and I still did consulting work. So I had these 3 gigs going, and because they were all interconnected, they all gave me access to seeing the picture I was looking to see. And so anyway, I did this one guy in Roanoke. He's a big electrical contractor. He built things like Walmarts and Amazon warehouses and factories and power plants and stuff like that. Not your average wiring a house and putting in Romex. So he would have me. He did. By this time when I did electric work, since I didn't have a shop of my own, I would fix people's stuff, right? And normally I wouldn't charge anything. Right? I'd see, oh man, your house is about to burn down, just like I did with the flickering light. I said, hey, we got to fix that, and I would do stuff like that for the general public, and I wouldn't take any. No. They would give me a chicken or a couple of cakes, or could always buy me dinner anyway. Um, But I would work for these contractors, and they paid me really, really well. And I would basically oversee jobs. They'd be really spread out. They'd have a ton of jobs. They couldn't. They were more busy getting business, making these big deals, and their working staff was getting thinner and thinner and thinner. And so these big, complicated jobs are being done by chuckleheads who don't know what they're doing, having no overseeing whatsoever. Right? So he would call me up and say, I got this, be right by you. You can just jump in. And, what he would do is he would go get guys from Minnesota and other states to come and work on these things, offer him a chunk of money. So he'd want me there from the first day to say who was good, who was bad, who would work out. And he would either say you're good or you're fired. And so, and this is when I was um, getting to be really big, and I was on the edge. I died in 2014, so this is like I'm moving in that direction. And so I really can't get up on a ladder. If they have a genie hoist, I can get up there, but getting up on that genie hoist was even tough for me to do. So anyway, and once I got on the genie hoist, I had to bring up a lazy boy, and I would just stay up on a genie hoist and ride all around and do work out, make connections up in the ceiling. Anyway, so I'm doing this, and he gets me on this job. He goes, listen, I want you there for the first few weeks and spec out everyone and get the crew moving. And of all the people I'm going to hire, I want you to find a guy who could kind of do your job, oversee things. What I want you to do is this is going to be a 24/7 kind of job. So it's going to be a day shift and a night shift. So I want you to be there at the beginning, do your little reading palms, reading people, figuring out who can do what thing, because I'm very good at that. And and then get the job moving that first month. And so he gives me the address of the place, and so I go and look at it, and I come back. I said, "Didn't you wire this like 4 or 5 years? Didn't they? That thing's a brand new Walmart. It's like one of the first big Jamunga Walmarts." He goes, "Yeah, but they're redoing the lighting." I said, "What? The lighting is fine." He goes, "No, we're putting in LED lighting. We're experimenting with LED lighting." I said, "Well, I don't. I mean, you have the most efficient fluorescent lights in that building, and they're like 3 years old. They got another 12 years on their warranty. I mean, if there are no black spots on the ball, I don't know why you're doing this." He says, "Listen, they're giving me $1 zillion to do this. They want it done immediately. They want to see how well this works." So I'm like, "Okay, you're paying me a lot of money. I have the time. Sure. I know you. I like you. Yes. And I know you're going to give me a nice bonus when this all works out perfectly and they give you the big check." He goes, "Yep. Well, again, I'll be indebted to you." I said, "That's right, buddy." So anyway, I start up the job. They bring and people from every place imaginable and talk about non documented aliens. I mean, a lot of these people had flippers and 6 eyes, and because those guys came to work on the night shift, and they didn't need a genie hoist. So and that guy knew that nothing would phase me, right? So anyway, so we start out the job. I get everyone fitting their slots, and really very few people had to go. Pretty much everyone kind of had an idea. There was some language barriers, cultural barriers, things like that, religious barriers, but I worked it all out, and it was fine, right? So I found a guy who was really could have run the whole show. He never slept. came from a planet that never slept, and so that's all good. It's all going. So I make, I get a space back in the warehouse where the break room was, and these guys don't take breaks, so I make it my little office, and all the important hardware that could be, just walked away with. I store there, and then they have these cages. I have all like the expensive stuff that could be walked away with in cages and locked up. And anyway, so everything's running the first month very nicely, and we're on budget and moving along on schedule, and everything's great and fine. And it turns into a nice rhythm. And he's comes every Friday, sees how we're doing, pats me on the back, takes me out to Gino's, which is a fine Italian restaurant he likes, and takes me out to dinner. And you know, sometimes we go to the Roanoke Hotel. He knows I like to stay in nice hotels, so he'll put me up for a few days just as a motivator. And because that place had a nice pool, they actually had a massage therapist, all those things I like. Like I said, I like that kind of life. That's what this life has been about, to have a foot in both, in like the poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich, and try to balance the equation. So anyway, so this is all going along very nicely, and I am enjoying it. I mean, so he has to kind of keep me happy, because he's really happy with the money he's making, and with the progress, and all the corporate boys keep popping down, popping at night. But I picked the guy to run the day shift because he was really eloquent, really good looking. Almost wore a suit. I mean, he was corporate material, and so he fit the staging very nicely. That's what they call it, staging or optics, right? So all the corporate guys said, "Yeah, all this, my boss he's a great guy. He's got the right man on job." Of course, I'm running it all at night, but and every because I said, you know, I'm Mr. Strategy. It's going like the clockwork, because I'm lining everything up for for a whole week. We're going to need to do this day, this day. We're going to need these parts. We're going to need this many, this over here and that, and I have everything worked out. And before I would leave at 6 in the morning, that guy would show up, and we'd spend a good. He would get the donuts and the coffee, and we would, I'd show him what was planned out. He goes, "Yes, sir," right away, and he would do the day shift, and I do the night shift, and he was getting paid pretty good. Everybody was getting paid pretty good. So we're going along, and it's like I don't even have to be there. I mean, and I do that, at a certain point when it's more than halfway done and we're going along swimmingly, and there's no hiccups, and everyone's happy. I'll take a couple of days, and I'm put up in the Roanoke Hotel. If I get there, I stay there. I don't go, because if they have a problem, they can call me on the phone. I'll be there in like 5 minutes because it's just over there, right? So, and that's accepted. I tell the bosses, it's like nothing hidden. This is what I'm going to do. So everything's still running nicely, but it's definitely in a pattern, and it's not like I don't have any other. And that's one reason I would have my consulting business, electric business, working for the desk. But it was different things. It kept me entertained. So anyway, so everything's chugging along. Maybe we're going to be done in a month. And so um, I then show up. So when I'm, take 3 days off and I have good night's sleep a couple of times, and I'm bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I go downstairs, have a nice breakfast, and I'll go show up on the day. And now everybody in the day shift knows who I am, because I met them all the first month, and so they call me the boss, right? And they call the guy who runs the day shift Sarge, right? And so, "Oh, boss, hey, how you doing?" And I said, "I'm not the boss. I'm just the old soldier." And so it took a while, but they started calling me that. But and that's another nickname, the old soldier. So anyway, one day when I come in for the day, we get a special delivery, right? And it's interesting that I'm there for the delivery because they actually have me. They need me to sign for it, not Sarge, right? So anyway, um, I signed for it. It's in a crate, and there's a big manual, right? And the manual's like in a plastic, thing that has a seal on it, and it says "Do not open till," and it gives a date, right? When they estimated this is when this part needs to be connected to what we're doing. And on the blueprint, it was on the blueprint, but it was just like it showed, the circuit blueprint, and it showed all the controls for the lighting were to go into this bus, and then the bus is connected to this box. But from that bus, we had the bus, but from that to that box, we didn't have the box, and we didn't have the documentation. We didn't have anything to say what the circuits or the power or how it was all supposed to be wired together. None of the above, right? So I'm going, okay. And it has do not open till, like about a week from when they delivered it. And so I said, fuck that shit, open it up, take it out. And I'm looking at this thing, and it has, the downright um, circuits, but it just shows from where the bus is down to where we're going to put pipes in the top of this box, and there's a trough in there, and there are all these connectors. It just shows putting all the wires from the lights into this part of the connectors, and then over here the power goes in there. Nothing else. Doesn't say anything about how it works or what it's doing or why that box even has to, because we already had chunks of the lighting, as we put it up and bought it there. We already were like, hot wiring it to see if it worked, right? We didn't want to wait till the very end and find that there's a short here or there. So, we know all the lights work. We could do it just with light switches if you want, or circuit breakers and panels. But no, they all have to go into this box. So anyway, I'm trying to bring the Sarge in, and he has no idea, even why or what that. I mean, it's very simple of what we have to do. It's like anyone could do this. It's just pipe from the trough into the little trough in the box and take these wires into those connectors. And it's very, very simple. It's not like we can't do this, but we have no idea why that box is there or what that box is doing or why it needs to be done or any of the above. Because there's a circuit breaker panel over there just set up to, that's what we did. We hot wired it to that circuit breaker panel, and each banks of those lights had a circuit breaker. We could just, right? A lot of other, that's what a lot of stores do. And you can have relays and turn whole banks of lights on from a little button up front. But no. It's all going into this box, right? Okay. So, and there's nothing about it. So, there's Rad, Radcliffe, no, Rad something. There are about 4 colleges near Roanoke, right? This women's college and, another kind of bourgeois liberal arts college. And then there's Rad something, which was a military kind. It's where they still do have an explosive thing for the Defense Department there. And then they have Tech, right? That's the big kahuna of universities. It's the flagship of Virginia's universities, very militarized. Anyway, I knew professors in all those places. And 3 of them had their own engineering departments, and some had, physics guys and all kinds of stuff, right? So I bring a bunch of, hey, come over and have lunch over here, and I want to show you a job I'm working on. And they did, and there was no way of opening that box. Right? We hadn't hooked it up to the pipes and didn't do anything. It's just we took the crate off of it and kind of moved it where it was going to go, but we didn't do anything to it, right? And it was freestanding. It was like about 4, it was like a good 5, 6 feet away from anything, any wall, any place. And it just, we're going to move it over to where it's going to be, but we just have it standing right there. And so these guys, so how, they open up the little thing where pipes are going to come into and where all the things are, but they can't see anything else. And they got little fiber optic things, and there's no way they can put their little gizmos down there. They said, well, let's see if we can open. There was no like screws or anything it was just a, rectangle, right? A monolith. And it was gray instead of black. And so we kind of were fooling around with it, and we decided to and this is the 88 to 2006. What is that? 20 years, give or take. This is about 20 years since I was at Cornell and fooled around with that monolith that was buried in a coal mine and been there for a million years. Anyway, so I again say, I wonder how much this thing weighs. So I go out into Walmart's and get a bathroom scale. And again, this thing is lighter than light. It's not really heavy for its size. And so we kind of tip it up, and we're trying to slide the bathroom scale underneath it. And it's got this little digital readout that you put in front of you, because if you're so fat, you can't look down at the scale. And so we're trying to slide it underneath there, and it tips over and falls on one edge, and it busts open like a flower, right? It was like, and that fell down, and the inside kind of came to a steady on its base, and there it was, all the gizmos on the inside, and it was stayed out of Star Trek, the 37th century. There was stuff in there that none of these guys are electrical engineers. They're all physicists. They pretty familiar with pretty high-tech stuff. They don't have a clue. And this one guy goes, look at this crystal. Look at my instrument. It's like reading, it's off the scale on the EMF. And then it's going past there. It's like, I said, it's where scalar, there's a thing called a torsion flux. And, in back to fusion, I had torsion flux capacitor, right? So that, at the end of big, in, gigantic hydro dams, these gigantic generators, at the end where the commutator is it creates this tremendous flux, this friction because from the geofield around our planet to this thing making tremendous amounts of alternating current. And in between those three phases of the alternating current is where this tension accumulates and goes out the end of the generator. And so you go see any pictures of Hoover Dam or places like that. They had these gigantic generators that are taking the big turbine, the billions of gallons are falling down over this turbine, making that horsepower of that water falling into electricity. At the end, they have these cages, and it's like a Faraday cage. And then around that, they have like big metal gates, like you can't get in there. And it big signs that don't even get this close. This is dangerous. You're being, this is high voltage. You could die. And that's a torsion field. And that's what was coming at the end of this little crystal once, and it wasn't even energized. It's just kicking out, this amazing frequency of current just from the crystal. And at the end was where, the end of that meter goes, but it's wanting to go there. And I go, that's a torsion field. And they all knew what that was. And I said, they all kind of get back. And I said, this is surreal. I said, I think that's why this case was on here the way it is, because this thing's going to, how do we put this back together, right? And just as we're realizing we're being exposed to something that could really be damaging to us, and maybe all of Roanoke, Virginia, because the stuff inside that thing was like off the peak, right? And so this other guy, he just, this is 06, they had cell phones, so he started taking pictures of everything, and he splits, right? And he was one of the guys who had worked in deeper projects. Most of these other guys were just scholastics I knew. And anyway, so we're trying to figure out how to put the casing back on, and these guys come in, right? Like men in black. They come in with their briefcases. Okay, everyone out, and they get out, and we don't see how they put the sides back up together, and he basically there's everyone out, and there's guys out there not letting us go, right? So they go over to that part of the warehouse, and they have a table and folding chairs that was the break room, and they sit us down, and they have to sign non-disclosure forms, and they have a little thank you money in an envelope, and all the other guys except this one guy goes, and he said, and that was the guy who had the little meter and said, this thing's pushing out ridiculous amounts of current, and it's like wanting to go into, and that's when I said torsion fields. And so he goes, you guys, you're pretty smart. We could use two guys like you. Do you want to join our? I said, so what corporation are we going to work for? Oh, we can't tell you until you sign a non-disclosure. Didn't we already sign a non-disclosure form back there? That's why we got the nice little envelope of Benjamin's. He goes, well, yes, but this is another stage of that. You have to sign on. I said, I've been around. I've never signed on. This is like, I do have a line where this guy goes, that sounds pretty, it sounds like I'd be fooling around with stuff like that. And he goes, yeah. And so he signs on. He's younger than me. And, so I got a nice little bonus there in my pocket. I don't need any more cash. How much money do you really need? Back in the day, between 1940, well, let's say 38 to 88, if you were, let's say, making over $5 million, with each increment over $5 million, you had to pay a higher increment in income tax. And let's say you were taking home $50 million, right? You would be taxed about 70% of that. So let's ask Google. What is 70% of $50 million?
The answer is 35 million United States dollars.
Okay, there you go. So that amount taken off, you made 50, you're going to take home 35, in 1 year. $35 million, let's say, in 1950. That's a lot of money. How much better is your life going to be with 25 million? And so that went on until 1988, right? And it started to be hacked away by first Jimmy Carter, then good old Ronald Reagan. And the person who destroyed this country economically more than anybody else was Bill Clinton. And he was put in there to have those sexual dalliances, to be the distraction of us, our safety net being destroyed. He got rid of welfare. He got rid of, and Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan started it off, decontrolling and all of that kind of stuff. And Reagan broke the unions by, firing all the air controllers. And but Bill Clinton was Warren Wilson and Bill Clinton, probably two worst presidents we had. So anyway, the corporate motif now is so out of whack. Like the $1 billion bros. How much more money do those guys? I mean, what's his name? Musk, puts in 125 million to get Donnie over the line, right? He jiggers. I'm sure they played games with computers and the internet and you name it. They did it just so they could get they did not win by a landslide. It wasn't a yes, we won, and the American people want us to do all this stuff. The American people didn't want us to go start a war in South America, with Mexico and Canada, and go after Greenland, and maybe end up having a war with NATO, because none of that was, or those almost 1,500 presidential decrees, just read them, and they're nuts, right? And none of that, we didn't vote for that, right? And so, and they are going to go after every immigrant they can find, which is going to destroy the American economy. You're not going to have any vegetables. You got no food in the supermarket. No one's going to get a roof on their house or any sheetrock home. So there aren't going to be any new. All those houses that burnt in California, nobody's going to be fixing or cleaning that shit up anytime soon. So yes, and so Donald went on TV the other day saying, "Well, you're not letting the people go in there with dumpsters and clean their own." Well, if they do, they're going to die because all the toxic material. I mean, to clean all of those that place that burnt down, like Malibu. I mean, it was all built up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all done with asbestos and you name it. If your average homeowner goes in there with a shovel and a little paper mask, they'll be dead in 2 years, So this is the kind of government we have right now. And it's no different than the governments we've ever had before, just all the stories I'm telling you. So back to the Walmarts. So I say to the guy, so he's saying, you guys are pretty smart. And before I say no to, signing on for that, I basically said, listen, so, at the end of that thing, it was torsion fields. At the end of the torsion fields was scalar. That's a scalar generator. Now, the other guy didn't know that. I did. I said, that's a scalar generator. That's mind control. You're dumping, why know all those LEDs are, because those LEDs can discreetly flicker on and off, and they can people's cerebral cortex. So you're going to have them buy this, do that, go out and kill people. Is that what this is? An experiment for that? And he kind of looks at me and goes, "You sure you don't want to sign on? We could really use a guy like you." I said, "No." And anyway, I'm sure you've already looked me up. You can tell that I've been around the block a few times, and I'm an old guy. I've been seemingly involved in all this kind of stuff since the late 60s and early 50s, late 50s. I've been involved with all the people who were way above your pay cycle. I am no threat to anybody. Actually, I'm kept around because I'm an asset. And you wouldn't be, saying, "Oh, wow, we can pay you anything, and you're going to really see some great stuff." And blah, you're a really smart guy. I said, "Nah, I'm an old guy. I like what I do. I don't have to work that hard, and I don't want to be your slave." And this guy's a young guy. He can definitely be your slave, and he'll be happy with the money and whatever prestige you throw his way. But and I looked at him. I said, "One day you're either going to be like this guy, or you'll be dead. So you should think about that." And I just shook his hand. I said, "You're a great guy." I mean, the corporate guy. I said, I'm not, I've worked for this. I've been part of this, but I have a line. I have a kind of, it's called integrity. This is about where I go, right? And yes, I've already been, I had radio shows. I had a radio show in the 1960s at WAAF in Worcester, Massachusetts. I used to sit in for Bob Fast and Steve Post when they were too stoned, and they would, "Man, I can't even leave the bar. Can we get up to BAI?" And I would just play records, and there was this really cute girl who was the engineer. I mean, I never wanted. A lot of guys when I was at AAF, and I had to run the board. I did. It was, I just turned it on. If it worked, it's like me doing this show. I just turn it on. If it works, it works. If it don't, okay. And that's my attitude towards this technology. I'm real familiar with what it is, its history, the people. That's the guy I am. Yeah, I'm technically a droid, but I don't want to, unless it's the kind of stuff I want to play with. I don't want to play with it. Right? Like I never learned really how to drive a car. Yeah, I got one now, but I didn't learn how to change it. Well, everyone here knows how to at least change the oil. Me, not so much. So that's what that was all about. Mind control. Now virtually every Walmart I go in there, all the tubes up there are LEDs, right? So everywhere everyone goes, all the tubes are LEDs. So if they did in that store, they can do it anywhere. So that our friend there who is going on, it's just a circle. You know, we're going round and round. Let's see what you guys have been writing here as I've been jabberwalking. Let's see. Mr. Light says they have altered the time zoo many times. We are not actually in the time that we believe that we are in. That's right. You know, buddy, send me a email to the dude awake 42 at Gmail, and I will send you all the novels I've written over the years, all about this. Right? I love to get some feedback. Janie says, "Oh, fluorescent lights." Light says, "Cycles. Let's go around again. Repeat after me." Let's see. Margin from fluorescent lights. Yep. Migraines from fluorescent lights. They help with the Wi-Fi to see who's doing what in your home. That's right. LEDs are just one of them. Washing machine, microwaves, phones, etc. Right. I mean, my buddy his wife bought a brand spanking new silvery stainless steel refrigerator that has doors. You can open up two parts of the freezer so you don't let all the cold out. You can just get the ice cream part in. There's a drawer for ice cream. She wanted to be like Miss Pelosi. And I was sitting in their house doing my laundry, talking to the cats. You saw that earlier show. That's where I was, in that undisclosed location. And the refrigerator started talking to me about you need milk, and make sure you don't get you need to have the low fat. Just tell me what a dummy was, because there was no milk in the refrigerator. It's like it's how to lower your self-esteem by your refrigerator, right? And they're going to need a new washer. The rinsing cycle doesn't work too well. So I wonder what the washing machine's going to tell me. Is that eucalyptus? Yes. You mean the geometry waveform? Yes. Is that what you're talking about? Again, the Greeks knew all about this stuff. You read Euclid, you read the guy who they killed. They wanted him, he was giving the public too much information, having them realize how their life was going to be through mathematics. What was that guy's name? Anyway, they killed him while he was, he wouldn't leave Athens because he was working on this equation. And so they just, you can leave, go, just run away, go to one of those islands, have fun, put up a blackboard there, scribble all you want, but you got to get out of town. And he just didn't care. He just, I don't know if it was Euclid or the other because there's algebra, there's trigonometry, right? And there's geometry. Geometry is the only real math. The rest of the stuff is make-believe math, right? So, and anybody who's in cryptology, working out codes, that is you want to find the key, you got to know geometry. Oh, you want to know the key, got to know geometry. Pretty good. So we've been going at this for an hour and a half, give or take. You're still there strong. So any more things here to the subject matter? Let's see what's. Jane Jones. The day after tomorrow. Yep. You Easter time. Why the sun glints over your head? Because it's a fluorescent light right over my head. That's why. And see, that is the difference between photonic and incandescent light. This is right in between. Fluorescent light is like blinking on and off 60 times a second. And incandescent is like a burning, it's burning the element, right? And that's why it burns out. It has a lifetime. Fluorescence, there's a neon gas in there, and there's two electrodes at each end, and there's a high voltage transformer in there, and that's what it energizes the fluorescent material, and it glows, right? So that's not quite photonic light. Photonic light is that light that comes from God. Why are we animated beings? We're just a bag of water with a couple of trace elements in there. Why? Is because the energetic of love's co-creation that comes from the sun, that's what energizes life on this planet, right? Photonic energy. Let's see, fluorescence, light says, cycles, let's go around again. Yes. Let's see, help with Wi-Fi. Yes. So the scalar box for LEDs was a MK Ultra device, which is now microchipped. Yep, pretty much. Mm-hmm. That's there's a lot of things in between that, but pretty much that's it. Yep. And it's what it is. And our friend is Mr. Light is going on about that. We're just going into. We've been here before. The movie The Matrix, when Neo gets to the architect's office and a whole wall of TV things of him screaming, yelling, like more TV sets than you can. It's pretty much what's going on. So the thing is, you guys out there in dreamy dreamland, you have to realize that you can navigate this by basically getting a grip of your consciousness, right? Going into this space where that I am, that you are, right? And that's why I constantly use the term of we're all our relations, God all the way down to the earth form, right? So, Mr. Light, get a hold of me at the dudeawake42 at Gmail. Dudeawake42 at Gmail. Is micro age equal to particle science? Again, that it is, but it's like the thing that's missing is the equal sign, right? There's a lot of difference between micro and particle science, right? But basically, you can break it down to this: within electrical devices, right? There is power and there is control. Right? The micro thing is the power, and the particle thing is the control, because it's a control on many dimensions, not just the one that the power is in. Because you keep anything around the speed of light, that's your dimension. That's where you are. All the guys who come and visit us, they pop, as Stephen was talking about, popping in, um, and that we are using these crass weapons in their dimensions, taking out whole planets, whole solar systems, whole everything for their crass, what they think is, important, for national security. How much do you think humans can biologically affect photon? 100%, because that's what we are, right? Like I said, what animates us is that photonic light from the sun. That is God's love, right? So you got to get there. You got to become that I am presence, right? And when you do that, the only way you can do that is get past your ego. When I started the show off with this rabbi talking about, the biggest problem is this radical poisoned ego that humanity has. Like I was saying about tax. 75% of millionaires would get taxed. 75%. I mean, 100% over and above $5 million. You got a great day. If you were making $50 million, you got taxed 75% of that, which left you 35 million, which is, you could buy a lot of boats for that, a lot of houses, a lot of stuff, buy a lot of stock. It's and back in 1950, that 35 million was like worth 100 million, 200 million today. So, but by taxing the rich and corporations that way, we built a middle class that actually could buy a home, send their kid to college, and buy a lot of stuff, which made those millionaires a lot of money, because if those people didn't have the money, they couldn't buy this stuff. And Henry Ford understood that. And so did Mr. Rockefeller, you know. But his boys were they wanted to control the universe, because they were, like Nelson Rockefeller was part of the Majestic 12. He was being exposed to everything that Stephen Greer was talking about: time travel, looking into the future. Boy, if I knew the future, I could, make a mint on the, stock market. Well, they did do that, but it also had, and this is still, they understand they have power over all this technology, but they don't understand the responsibility, unexpected consequences by when you fool around with this shit, right? And not Zeus, but the guy with the hammer, Thor's brother Loki, right? And in the Marvel movies, and then the TV, they did a show about him, and he's trying to be the trickster he is, and then the time police get a hold of him, and fuck with him a good deal until they say, okay, listen, buddy. I mean, we're only doing this to you because we really respect you. We need you. We need a guy like you who's a schmuck, a real trickster, who's done all this crappy shit. But actually, you could have been way worse. You could have destroyed the whole universe, but you didn't. And you actually, with the Thanos thing, you got a good side to you. So we're going to give you an opportunity to be a good guy and give you a place where you can have a home and people like you and care for you. And you got a place where you can feel, a self-worth, right? So go watch that TV show, because they really do get into time and space and all of these interesting points of view. And they do a great job. Those guys who do all of those platform TV shows, they do a great job because they get unbelievable amount of money. They got total access to guys like me who write their shit, or at least write the story, and then they got good writers to make it into a good TV show. And again, anybody out there, I've got all these novels, I got all this stuff I've written, I got all these shows. Somebody knock on my door, give me a call, get a hold of me. Anybody can get a hold of me at the dudeawake42@gmail, right? And there have been a lot of, what do you call it, trolls who, we want to, no. You have to be real. You have to be a person with a name, and you can give me a phone number that I can call you and then look you up and see, what corporation you're working for. I have no problem working for corporate. I've worked for them my whole life, right? But I do have integrity. And at a certain point, high enough on the food chain of corporations, just like Dr. Bitterman, he realized that, this guy is not a Nazi. Yes, he's, not, but he's the guy I need. He can do this stuff where he understands things that most people don't, and he doesn't judge me. I mean, I didn't judge. I like Dr. Bitterman. Virtually every Nazi I met in person, I met a lot of Nazis in Brazil. They had me do some really weird shit, I was young. I was in my 40s, and they gave me an opportunity. I went to places out there in the Amazon where I was the first white person those people ever saw. It's like going to Mars and meeting Martians, right? And they were great people. I mean, no way that their language not even close. So we had to basically grok each other to the point where we could basically telepathically. They were very strong on that. I was strong enough, and so I'm not a telepath, but I have a what I call my twitchy antenna. So we, after a week of being with those guys and eating what they eat, there was no problem in communicating, and they realized who and what the white world was and what was going on all around. They knew all about everything we did, but they had never left their little patch out there in the Amazon. And what they did do, I said, listen, I was sent here because the people who are going to do this, they understand that you're here. They also understand that there's a value to what you are culturally and to the planet. And so they just want to give you a heads up that the big machine is going to be chopping through this place and destroying your place in a year or two. So whatever you're going to do, you better do it now, right? And whatever kind of little bits of insight you might be able to give these guys to, like, curb their anxiety and curb their, because their anxiety is causing them to destroy the world. They kind of understand that, but they can't stop. And maybe you might have something they could, you could tell, I could bring to them, and they did, right? And so that's why I hung out with the Nazis. I didn't hang out with them. That's why they offered me this opportunity, and I went and did it. And that's why I worked for Dr. Benjamin. I knew that guy was, he had the, I mean, he was straight out of a movie. He was, he wasn't, Peter Sellers and, the day I learned to love the bomb, Dr. Strangelove, but pretty close because he was making a super soldier, That's what we were doing at Duke University in 1968, 69. Let's see. What else coming? What are you guys saying here? Let's see. Photon, all at the same time, bursting energy. Yes, exactly. As Steve was discussing the big hurricane that blew out Asheville and here, that was done by uh, a neutron generator that's in the South Pole. Now, it was, quote unquote, developed to measure neutron energy out in space. Yeah, it does that. But why is it a generator? It creates neutronic energy, more than a neutron. And it can be focused on any place it wants. And that's what he was talking about, like causing earthquakes and such. Right? And what they did with the floods that happened up here did not come from, we did not have a lot of rain, right? We had about, the amount of water that we got. If you had figured it out, what the rain, it would have been like 100 inches of rain, but it came in less than 4 hours. There's no physical way that you can get 100 inches of rain in 4 hours. What happened, and if it did, it would have flooded, the whole everything, but it didn't. It only hit specific places that corporations wanted to get rid of the people. Right? Trade, Pogie, Elks Mills, a bunch of other little places that they bought 80% of all the real estate, and there were people who owned their farms and didn't want to go, and where they're going to go. So we give them, they could get, let's say that even if they got 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, those people would have, where are they going to go? They'd blow through that shit in 4 years, right? But they had their farm, they can stay there forever, right? They grow food, they grow this, they grow that, make a little money, that's all they need. They have their happy little life. They don't want to be bothered. And these guys just washed them away because what they did was they took that neutronic energy and put it underneath the firmament. People don't realize this planet is a water planet. Most of the water isn't up in the air, isn't in the ocean, it's under the ground. And so it pushed it right up there where there's a rainforest. It pushed all that water that's been there forever and shot it down the Nolichucky and 4 other rivers and washed these people out in less than 6 hours. So that's what we're looking at. These guys have, and I gave a speech at the UN about the Stephen Greer speech that he gave. I gave in 1974 at the UN when we had our little NGO, Alternative Technologies, right? And I was there were 5 of us who started. We all came from Cooper Union, and we all thought outside the box. And there was this one. We were all part of things like the U.S. Psychotronic Society and other quasi paranormal technology entities, just like Dr. Bitterman's SEAL Corporation. We had been part of. I'm part of that. And those boys all, like it were guys like Preston Nichols and Al Bielek and all those guys, all the kids who were part of the Montauk Project. And that book, see, all those guys had signed on. So they had their brains, that was the story that was planted there to be planted out in the public. It's not quite, it was kind of what they were doing there, but they were doing a lot more. And Stephen Greer, I have to say that he's a righteous dude because, his only really driving thing, he wants to be the patron saint of disclosure. That's not a bad thing, right? That's what his ego wants. He wants to be remembered for that, So that's not a bad thing, right? And he's got a level of integrity that I have to say, I've watched him since '91, since I met him in the emergency room at Asheville, North Carolina. And so he has this level of integrity. And when I met him, he was a young man. He's probably maybe 5, 6, 10 years younger than me. And he had a lot of spunk in him. I was in my 40s when I was there. So he's probably in his early 30s when I met him. And he, this has taken a bit out of him. But like I said, he hasn't lost his family, his wife. Most guys who go off this edge, they either get whacked or they get just burnt out. Like David Wilcox is a good example, right? And Corey Good. And they're all plants, and they've been wired, and and that's why I stopped doing those speeches. I gave that one speech, and I was at the UN, and all the people were out there. It's the auditorium that had like 300 of the high-end rollers up there, and who had made all the guys who sat on Donnie's podium. Those people that I spoke to had a lot more gravitas than those morons. Because those guys are just, Bezos and Musk and Michael Penis Boy and Faceless Boy. They all, they're just poster boys, right? They're ready to be thrown under the bus. And boy, Elon's going to get thrown out of the bus. That's for sure. And so I gave this speech all about this is, what the Stephen Greer speech is the speech I gave, but with a whole bunch of more. And Stephen's obviously giving it to a bunch of students at university, 30, 40 years later. So, but he talks to, movers and shakers too. He talks to people in the government and, people who aren't wrote into these programs. Because the powers that be want this information brought out. And Stephen does a great job. He really does. He does a great job of not, if he is really being a schmuck for the hidden hand, he's a great actor. Because I can't see, I look at him, I read him, he is doing a righteous thing. So that's my take on him. Who knows whether it's, because technology's gotten better and better. And there aren't too many griots around telling stories like I do. And that's why I'm here. That's why I've lived through 7 deaths, That's why I've lived through 20 different lives, and came out the other side better for it. Meaning I learned something, my 3, I don't get involved unless I'm going into, extricate the innocent folk, and I have a good exit strategy. I don't get involved unless I'm going to, my involvement would do more better and make the situation better than if I didn't go in. And the third one is I don't go in unless I'm going to learn something that will make the situation better. Those are my three guardrails of my life. And they've suited me very well. And that's another thing that we kind of have to have is guardrails. And most people don't have them, you know. Yep. I actually had a video of that, right? And it was on, you know, beta. It's kind of degoused by now if I even know where the thing is. But somebody has a copy of it, I'm sure, because the UN had their own cameras there. Anyways, and that story goes, you know. So I was, you know, one of the guys who started this thing. We did a couple of great things. We figured out how to make potable water for everyone in Africa without spending $1 zillion. And that was one of the things that was overrunning Africa at the time were these 2 liter soda bottles, because people could afford buying a 2 liter soda bottle to drink that wouldn't kill immediately. Yeah, it would give them diabetes 20 years down the line. But anyway, you know, when we first got there, and we were supposed to think of things, you know, that would save the world, kind of, right? And we knew that, first we got to know everybody at the UN. We went to a lot of meetings. We met people from all over the world, and that was fun. And and we knew we weren't, because there were other NGOs, and they all had nice offices with nice IKEA furniture and nice rugs, and they gave us a closet, right? But it was a great closet. I don't know if you ever looked at the UN building. It's this monolith, just like 2001. And on the sides, the walls go up like this, and there are no windows on the sides. But on the long side of the building, everything is glass, right? So on this side is where they have all the HVACs and all the kind of stuff that makes the building work. And they were pretty. Some of those things were pretty big, like 60 feet by however wide that building is, 120 feet. So that's a pretty big closet. And they would have at the ends, because we got about 60 feet of glass on this side and 60 feet glass and 120 feet, or I think it might even be wider than that. And that was our office. It was actually really cool, right? And we we went down to the basement and got whatever crap that was in the basement that in a week or two they were going to throw out. Then we got the guys to bring up service elevator, and we right next to service elevator. So when we wanted to bring up toys to play with, that would stop right in our closet, and we could unload straight there. And that was the best thing about our little office. And so we went and met everybody, and we I heard from everybody. From I said let's start with Africa, Asia, and South America. They're kind of semi, they've been had, and of course Africa had, England there taking advantage, and Germany there, and lots of other people there being, whatever you call that. Kind of same as what Israel's saying. Why can't we do this? You guys did this for hundreds of years. Why can't we do this? Anyway, so but Africa, that's where there are a lot of starving babies, and everyone's like, oh, just 75 cents a day gets this little baby gruel for a week. It's like, so, and we basically talked to everybody saying, what's your problem? What do you need? How can we fix this? And the biggest need, even all over the world, not just in Africa, but definitely in Africa, was potable water. And so, we said, so what's this? Well, there is no water processing. There are no pipes in the ground. They either get tons of water or drought, right? So there's always maybe a little stream running, but every animal has defecated in it, and that's why everyone's getting diseases from drinking surface water. So that's the only water they have is surface water. You drink it, you die. Okay, so that's why everyone's going to die of diabetes, and that's why diabetes is like being a big problem in Africa now. Anyway, so I said, okay, what's the other problem? He said, well, everyone dumps their trash there. So we have mountains of these 2-liter soda bottles everywhere. Oh, okay. And it's not like, people go to junkyards and tear apart metals and sell the metals. The plastic isn't, you can't do anything, no one's going to pay anything for the plastic bottle. Okay. So I said, can you get us, a collection of the kind of 2-liter soda bottles that are in Africa? And they said, oh, sure we can. So they did. And one day they brought up a dumpster full of empty plastic soda bottles. And they had nice little labels on them of what kind of soda, what plastic company made them, what was in the plastic, which was very helpful. And virtually every soda bottle, what it was made of, did not interact with infrared or the other that kills germs, the blue light. And that will pop into my mind. Anyway, so the sunlight has, sun will kill any bacteria, anything. So, went out into the backyard of the UN. They have these gardens everywhere, very nice. Between that big monument building and then the Flying Saucer building, that's the General Assembly building. And, went down there and with a little wheelbarrow and with a bunch of our volunteers filled the bottles up with brackish water. Right? And all we did was have a funnel with a little cheesecloth and pour scoop up brackish water, pour it into the soda bottle. So the hard stuff, the mud, the grime, the grit, the pigeon shit, all of the physical kind of thick stuff didn't go. But this water was still cloudy and gray and looking. So we take it up and one wall is facing the East River, and it gets the east, and the sun just comes straight up from the south and goes north right along. So that window gets sun all day long. So and there's no tinting. It's 100% sun. And so we line up about 30 or 40 of these things and, write down, bottle 1, bottle 2, but, give what we did with it, how we did it, blah, 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 right? So we can have a protocol. And so the next day we take a little bottle and we take, and all the whatever particulate was in that left kind of dropped to the bottom. So the water's not really clear, but a lot clearer than it was. And so we pour it into this little bottle and put a label on it of which bottle we got it from and what date and time and all of that, right? And so then we get another 2-liter bottle and we put the funnel on and the cheesecloth and we pour the water in without letting the crap from the bottom really get in there. So we just fill that bottle up to 80%, right? And put the lap on, put it up. Well, anyway, we take all those bottles down and they're all labeled. And John Hopkins and Rockefeller University are just on the other side of the United Nations. And these guys, once we figured out this thing, we went over to those guys and said, this is what we're going to do. Here, you guys are medical guys. What kind of protocols should we do? And that, they help us do that. And they had the labs to investigate the water. Right? So we went from the icky wrap, this bottle, 4 bottles, right? And the little bottles that they could use to experiment with and could take, controls, and they set up the whole protocol. And we just had the idea, We went around and asked, what do you need? What do you got too much of? And just very common sense. And what we found was by just doing this process for 4 bottles over 5 days, you would go from this water is going to kill you to this is totally potable water. Like almost, distilled, right? And so we gave all of this information to UNICEF, and John Hopkins and Rockefeller Foundation put together a whole protocol and sent it off into Africa with UNICEF. And within a year, we knocked down the death rate from getting poison of water by 250,000 people. Next year, 1 million people. Third year, 5 million people. Right? It was going up exponentially until the fourth year when the companies that made the soda bottles put something in the plastic that stopped the UV from getting at the water. And that's when I quit. I mean, I had already quit. We did those two things. And then I was asked, because the other guys, they were not comfortable with speaking to people. I was the guy who could speak to anybody, get into anyone's head, figure out what really needed to be, how to negotiate anything. I was good at it by that time. When I was early, mid-20s. And so I was asked, and what's his name? Clarence, who would say, we did this thing, and the second year after we did that, we got that out into Africa within 3 months. And then our next big thing was we made a solar stove that you could make with aluminum foil and a cardboard box. So people wouldn't have to cut down all their trees to cook with or to heat with. You could even use this thing to heat your home, right? So it's just made from cardboard box and aluminum foil, a little duct tape, right? And it was the angles and the way to make you could do it almost with any cardboard box. So those two things, and we got both those things out there within the first 6 months of our existence. And they got we didn't just think it up and test it. We got it out into the field through UNICEF first 6 months, right? So then we were working on other stuff, and I was asked, "Do you want to give a keynote speech for art and technology?" And you've been—that's all you talk about is the influx and Billy Kluver and you and Anyway, I said, "Sure, no problem." And they go, so this is what the conference is going to be about. These are all going to be all the people. This is an agenda. We want you to make this keynote speech, and we're going to give you a nice intro about all this great shit you did just the first 6 months you were here. You're saving all these people's lives. You're what we're going to do. That's what the UN's all about. Yay! Right? So I said, fine. So I have to write this, like, it has to be under 1,100 words, and, take no more than 10 minutes, and I have to write it. I have to hand it in to the committee that's putting this together. They have to okay it. And so I write this thing, and then I give it to Clarence and said, here, get one of your people to clean this up so it's accessible to the committee. And he goes, no problem. So he does that, and he brings it back, and it's kind of what I wrote. And so I go, fine. So anyway, and everyone's wearing their nice suits, and I'm not really wearing a suit. I'm just got, shoes and pants and a shirt, and I do have a kind of sports jacket, navy blue left over from prep school, and it's I had it pressed, and anyway, so I go in there, and so there. All the high mucky mucks are on the stage on a dais, right? We all got these nice chairs, and all the NGOs, they got their names of them, alternative arts and technology, and the whole thing was about how to take cutting edge technology, make it simple, marry it to the culture of the individual society that we're trying to help, so they can relate to it and say, yeah, we can do this, and it fits our, this feels right. It's not like some white people telling us what to do. So that's kind of what our NGO is about. And so get up there, and I got this 3 pages in my hand, and I'm looking at it, all these people, and Clarence gives me a really nice intro that here's one of these young guys, and he's really special. He's really different. He really is committed. He's not here as a career. He really, giving me a great. I'm feeling good about this, and I'm sitting next to all these high mucky mucks and $300 suits and $200 um, um, haircuts and I got not real long hair. I kind of stopped that, but I have a ponytail. I have a beard, and I kind of walk up and I don't say anything. I just look out amongst everyone. I'm just looking at making eye contact with as many people because the bright light's right in my face. I've got a spotlight on me. I'm from theater. I can do this. So I'm looking at them, and they're getting kind of uncomfortable. Like about a minute goes by, right? And when you're supposed to be up there for 11 minutes, that's like almost 10% of what you're supposed to say. And so I kind of looked out there, and I took my little speech, and I kind of did this to it, and then threw it out into the audience, and it just went. Right? And I had more than the 3 pages. I had a bunch. I kind of thought I was going to do this, and so maybe there were 10 or 12 pages were out there going. Ooh, 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 right? And then I said, I had a speech here, and I wrote it, but it was, cleaned up by the status quo that is sitting behind me. And I have 11 minutes now. I have 10 minutes, and I went into saying exactly what Stephen Greer said to that audience. And they were like, right? Because none of them all have been, very few in the audience. The guys behind me probably knew somewhat of what I was talking about and have exposed to it and been on committees about it. But the majority of the people out there knew. And I said, listen, this technology exists. They can shoot you from space with a death ray. They can cause earthquakes. They can change the weather. And they're doing this for profit. They're making sure it rains here where they can grow the grain and have their competitors have drought, and whole areas are burning up and having earthquakes that never had, this is all being done. It was being done, but not like on the level that it's being done now. It wasn't really noticeable. And I gave the whole shtick, right, in 10 minutes. And then when I was done, I just, turned around, and there Clarence was. And he put his arm around me. I mean, I didn't sense him or hear him but when I finished and went to turn, he kind of put his arm around me and really hugged me firmly. He goes, isn't this guy great? He really knows his First Amendment rights. He really, he knows how to tell truth to power. And that's why we have him here, right? And I turned around, and the chair that I was sitting in is gone. And the little plaque that had our NGO is gone. And he walks me over the side of the stage, and there are 2 security guards that walk me down the steps, not out of the place, but so everyone can see that this is what happens if you do this. And they have a folding chair. Now, all those people are in the auditorium cushy chairs. They have me sit down at, there in a folding chair. And everyone's kind of, looking at me and going, oh my God, I'll never do that. This is what happens to you. I didn't really think, I had no idea what they would do after I did what I did. And I'm sure Clarence knew me well enough to know that I probably would do that, right? And that they had that planned. Nothing ever is. I mean, I always thought I was being spontaneous, but I'm sure those guys knew I was going to do it, and they had it all pre-planned. Had the chair off to the side. They were taking away the thing before I even started. As soon as I threw the papers up in the air, they took the thing and the chair away from the dais. Anyway, I didn't look back to see that, but I'm sure that's what it was. And so before everything, we had a little breakfast that was very nice. Little croissants and little scrambled eggs and coffee, and everyone sat. So I sat at the table with all the high mucky mucks, right? So, and everyone was sitting at different tables with whatever crews they were with. And I basically, so after that, after everyone, so there was basically the breakfast. this first, basically keynote period, because they all, after I did the keynote speech, they came and said a little drib about that, and then they were going to have other speakers come in longer, and then have questions and answers and that kind of stuff. So anyway, I do that. I'm sitting in the folding chair for about an hour while those guys do their things, and they really are just like the speech that was handed to me to give. Very obviously said what the status quo was, and they, these guys had a higher on the food chain than everyone in the audience. That's for sure. Anyway, so we go to the where we had breakfast was just a nice little space, but where we had the lunch, which was really fancy, and they had like a cocktail period, right? First they had lunch, and then they had a cocktail period. And then everyone's going to be a little buzzed, and then go in and hear the speeches, and then have questions. Like, good luck with that. And so, anyway, when I go in, I don't sit at the high mucky muck table anymore. They whatever chair I was going to have was not there. It was just all those other guys sitting, and then they put me off to the side again so everyone could see me. It's like I had a dunce hat on. And not only did they sit me in a folding chair, but they gave me a TV dinner table with a TV dinner. I didn't get the fancy meal. I didn't get the linen tablecloth and the silverware right now. Anyway, I'm sitting at the thing, and they delivered the TV dinner, and I look at it, and I look up, and this really, really, really guy who is like really in charge. He doesn't have a $300 suit on. He has a $3,000 suit. He doesn't have like a $200 haircut. He's got like $1,000. I mean, this guy is like, and that was George Christie. And George Christie was one of the people who started the Rad Lab. He started Intelsat that put the satellites up. The first satellites up was his. Intel satellite. Telstar, all of that stuff from the 60s. He did that, right? And he worked with Werner to make the missiles to put those heavy things up in high Earth orbit. Yeah, Russians put Sputnik up. Russians were great for doing things that had visibility, that, optics, right? But putting Sputnik up, all it was, a baseball with a doorbell in it, It was just bing, 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 but it was, as it went around, you could pick it. If you had a shortwave radio and a sucker was going over your house, you could pick, Sputnik up, right? So the first thing we set up was a thing that had a scientific package, and we discovered the Van Allen belt. That was like the difference between our science and theirs. But they were great with optics, and we loved it because we could always, there's a missile gap, a bomber gap, a this gap, a that gap. I mean, as soon as we got the, U-2 satellite that we could fly over Russia and they couldn't shoot it down, we knew not that. I mean, they had just finished, Germany pulverized. Germany did what Israel has done to the Gaza Strip, and Germany did that to all of Russia, especially all their big cities. And Russia was just coming back from it. They weren't a rich, they only won the war because we kept giving them weapons, just like we were doing to Ukraine. This is just a repeat and wash, repeat and wash, repeat and wash. 2 hours and 33 minutes. What time is it? It's 8 o'clock. Let's see what you guys are saying. I've had this guy plugged in, so I don't have to worry about my battery. Let's see. Boom. Boom. Neuron and photon all at the same time bursting energy. Yep. Mr. Light is right on target. Yin and Yang. Yep. Exploding particles of light energy. Yep. Mr. Light is right on target. He's still a paid expose running a narrative. I wish I was. I mean, hey, if the corporations want to give me money, I'm not against that. I'm really not. But anyone who's basically, and Mr. Light, when he's talking about how things are repeating and repeating and repeating, meaning there's 8 million trillion billion different Al Bobs here on every level of integrity or not, you know. And this one, this time around, I'm been pretty good. I mean, yes, I spent almost 15 years working in the corporate world for desperate lawyers, making ungodly amount of money for doing nothing, and then living off their spare change because they wanted to keep me in a gilded cage so I could be on call to do whatever they wanted. But I could do whatever I wanted. I mean, I could go, back to Virginia or go back to North Carolina or go back to any place it didn't matter. If they needed me, they could fly me where they wanted me. So, I'm not up against this, but I do have a level of integrity. And that's important to them because they know that whatever I tell them, I'm not telling what I think they want to hear so I can get my paycheck because I don't really care. Yeah, you can pay me a lot of money and I can represent, right? But I'm always going to tell you the truth and I'm always going to be there to get the innocent out of harm's way. He's still paid running a narrative. And I still am running a narrative, right? It's just like Steven. Steven's running a narrative. We all are running a narrative. We all reading a script, don't you? Come on. Mr. Light, you real must know that about your speaking at the UN. Yes. I was at the UN for almost 2.5 years. Our little NGO was there. And then when so I kind of, did a much, deeper dive in the arts scene and the esoteric scene. I gave up with because the entities like the U.S. Psychotronic Society, they already were totally infiltrated. Everybody who had anything that the corporate scene wanted were like the boys, Al Bielek and Preston Nichols, and there were about 12 of those guys, really brilliant, really did a lot of, and they were already working for Grumman Aerospace and Lockheed and all those kind of entities, right? Just like I worked for Dr. Bitterman at the SEAL Corporation, but I knew where to draw the line. Yeah, pay me $5,000. Each of these magic boxes are going to make for you, no problem. Want me to sign on and be one of your boys? Sorry, not going to happen, right? Yeah, I'm in Brazil. I talked to the head Nazi there, and did you ever see the movie Boys from Brazil? I mean, that's kind of what it is. That's where I was. That was a genetics place where really, really bad people would come, and these guys would change them genetically. This is in the 80s. And they had gene splicing already. They had CRISPR, and they could, not just, oh, there's the man. Here's my deal. I don't need, what you call it, I don't need that DoorDash. Hey, Big Daddy. Put these 2 chairs so we can get up. I've been sitting too long.
Louis is very good, man. He's making it's like,
Oh, yeah.
I said, he's that great.
It's the cornbread I like.
I know it.
She said cornbread.
She said you like corporate.
Yeah.
Say that.
Okay, that's some. See you tomorrow. No, wait. You guys aren't coming tomorrow, are you? So the show I did earlier today, and I went into the kitchen where Louise was making soup beans, and I love soup beans. And go back and watch this morning show; it's very sweet. And so she's also baking cornbread, and that's really what I like with cornbread. So, you know, ugh. Ooh-doo-doo-doo-doo. Ham hocks. This lady is a holler. Yeah. That's why I wanted to put her on video a little bit, because she's so sweet. She's so cute. She really knows the Bible good, better than any of the stupid deacons. Well, it's the only thing that's not super sugar. I don't know how the original V8 will taste with this, but we'll see. Tastes like a Bloody Mary. Well, you know, if you go to Tractor Supply, they have all kinds of medicines for cattle and horses. And I have used a good deal of them. None of these things are advertised. Like DMSO, right? If anyone knows about medicine. DMSO, you know, when you have a nicotine patch, DMSO is a substance that carries the nicotine into your bloodstream through your skin. Well, at a certain level of consistency and viscosity, you use liniment, and you have other liniments. There's some really great horse liniments that are great for people with arthritis like me. I mean, all of my joints are burnt out. Right? I have neuropathy. I have every kind of thing wrong with my my motor neurons. And DMSO and those horse liniments have been great for me. I don't tell anybody else to use them, but so there's cures for cancer, and the biggest cure for cancer is cleaning up our friggin' environment. All you have to do is go in to Library of Congress and go into the Laboratory of Weights and Measures that's been around, since the 1890s. And they've been measuring, to keep statistical data on everything that Congress wants. And Smithsonian's very good at this too. And you look at the rate of cancer in 1890 and the rate of cancer in 1990, it went up by 300%. And you look at the rate of cancer from 1990 to 2020, cancer rate has gone up 1,000% from that time. Why? Hardly anybody had cancer in 1890. It wasn't prime, people dying of typhoid. And one reason is that people live a little longer. Now we're dying. We got to a pinnacle of about 77. Now we're starting to go down. None of the other industrial nations are. And the only thing that hasn't let us drop down even lower is that that's the whole American population. But if you only look at white men, they're dying at 56. But when you put in everybody else, Japanese people, Americans, Hispanic Americans, Black Americans. No. So everyone dies at the same time. They're just destroying the medical system in America. And it used to be fair to good. It was pretty good. Some of the best on the planet up until the 50s, By 1960, it's starting to profit was king. And she makes real salad. This is real slaw. She's the best. So in my life, another reason why I showed you Louise was that I wanted to show you the kind of people that I grew up around. As a little kid, I always had women of that precious nature, quality, and integrity my whole life. The men of my life were essential. And that's why I came out the way I did. So, back to UN. Dr. Telstar basically said, I haven't heard anyone talk like that since Nikola Tesla gave a speech at the Chicago World's Fair when him and Mr. Westinghouse said, Edison was still having trouble transmitting electricity in DC more than 6 miles. And so, Tesla and Westinghouse built a power plant at Niagara, and see what Johnny Boy sent us.
They may and say so too. They may and say so too.
John Birmingham.
They may and say so too.
That's all he has, really?
They may and say so too. They may and say so too.
Never that. My John, people go, why do you have anything to do with that guy? He's like that. So why have anything to do with it? When I have all these other nice stuff. So I haven't seen John in at least 3 years physically. And why he is semi-important is that he is the canary in the coal mine within the construct of the spiritual domain of the modern world. Because he's really having issues with, good and evil, in a spiritual sense. Right? Now it bubbles up in physical representations like that. But cornbread for the soup. V8. That is so weird. Ooh. It's like drinking a Bloody Mary without the vodka. So, let's see what he does here. Palladium blue star, which is energy is connected to mental blue. Supposed to cure cancer. Well, I've heard about the mental blue curing cancer. And again, I am not a biochemist, but the things I've, just worthwhile to look into. But they don't want to cure cancer. They want cancer as, a boogeyman, just like they need the Soviet Union to come back and be a boogeyman. Have, who's scared of transgendered people? Either somebody over there, Carrot Head's crew, are like having loads of fun with him because he signed an executive order that mandated that there's only two genders, right? Man and woman. And he states that, the large cellular structure that are women, that's what, and the small cellular structure of man is the Y chromosome. It is, at conception. But in high school biology, I learned that basically everyone's born either a woman or what they call it now, not non-gendered, but it's another term. But anyway, when you were first fertilized, you're either a woman or somebody without sex. And then after 6 weeks, the hormones drop down from the mother into the uterus, and it gets blasted with the Y chromosome, it's a boy. And then his little sex organ starts going out instead of in. That's really the only difference between men and women. And some men have breasts. I mean, all men have breasts, We just don't have the hormones to lactate. But I had this idea. This is one of my ideas I put out once in a memo at the United Nations that said if we give men, when they get married and their wife is going to have a baby, the man should be given female hormones to develop lactating breasts, or they could give a hand to the mom breastfeeding the baby, and that would cause world peace because moms don't like sending their boys or girls off to die in wars. And they do it because they kind of socially have to go along. Their husband is all macho, wants the boy to be macho. And so but if the guys breastfed the babies, They would feel like mom and not want to send the kid off to war and die. I mean, I would send that stuff out into the web of the UN and stuff like that. So I mean, I was definitely stuck out of that place. And after I gave that speech, it's not that I was a person non grata, because I went to a bunch of parties with those people right off the bat. You know, that's how we got to know everybody, right? And that was part of the shtick. That's why people like being working at the UN. There were all these parties and things and lectures and blah blah blah. You know, I'm a theater guy. It was all performance. There was nothing happening. Well, I didn't see a need. They weren't paying me a lot of money. They were paying me about $400 a week. And I made 6 times that being an electrician. I still did my electric work, you know. And I'm still doing my art, you know. So I just did that to have that experience, right? Have that exposure, have that connection. And I met Mr. Tesla and you know, Clarence, two shaker and movers. And Clarence, I stayed in you know, contact with Clarence and Mr. Telstar until, you know, Mr. Telstar died. I was like, you know, I was one of, I mean, he had a lot of people coming and saying and holding his hand and all that. But he really didn't have, he had a family, but not really. And so, because he was a guy who was like, his whole life was, you know, his representing what he was representing. He was representing a secret society called the ISIS Foundation. I'll look them up. Oh, let's see what Google has to say. ISIS Foundation. Hmm. Hmm. That's really strange. The number one thing on Google here is ISIS Foundation was found by Lana Lang in Smallville. You know, like the comic book. I didn't know this. Yep. People also ask, what is ISIS Foundation in Smallville? What happened to Lana Lang? Right? ISIS Foundation, nonprofit. ISIS Foundation, 501c3 nonprofit entity with board members consisting of studio owners, dance instructors, dance students, and musicians. I just found Smallville, DC database fandom. ISIS Foundation. We work has nothing about a transnational underground organization at all. But it makes sense. If you're going to have a cover, might as well be part of DC fandom. Okay. But you know, I used to go to their major, the high monkey major boardroom meetings, with Mr. Telstar, and once I hit about 45, I said, you need to join. You need to really, we've asked you to be part of this. And I keep saying I have to think about it more. And this has been almost 20 years. How about it? I said, I don't think I can. Okay. As yet spoken at the UN, according to Wikipedia. Yeah, well, he's out there in the main. Who would I like to be producing? I like J.J. Abrams. I find him quite interesting. And he has I like his cinematographic kind of motif. And, Steven Spielberg, if I'm going to go for it, why shouldn't I go for it all the way? Did you ever see he had a nice series on, I don't know what platform, but he did, this, I don't know how many shows he had, maybe 20 or 30, but about this family out there in the Midwest, and this kid sees flying saucer. He does a great job of discussing. It's like the guys who did Dark Skies. That was an NBC show that tried to be like the X Files, right? That was like too good. It was like spilling too many beans. It showed how the aliens were infiltrating everyone, and it was just like that 1950s movie when the aliens land in somebody's backyard and they put little things in people's heads and they're like human robots. Just like the 1950s one where, the pod people, they put the pod in your backyard and you would be dead and kind of you would wake up in the pod all gooey. All those movies, there was another one about, that's what Stephen was talking about. In the 1950s, 40s, they had radar that could take down the flying saucers. There was a movie about it in the 1950s. Earth against flying saucers or something like that. The movies have been totally always on Johnny Boy. He must be watching. So what's he saying now? Good. What do you want?
I mean, dude, it's not like it's gonna get in the gay man's asshole, dude.
Oh, what a boy. Doesn't that sound like Whoopi Goldberg a little bit? Whoopi Goldberg's long lost twin brother. That's John Birmingham. I don't know which is harder to drink, the water with baking soda or. I mean, like I said, but it tastes so much like a Bloody Mary then. What else are we saying here? Who'd you like to so those two guys? Mr. Light, what's he say? I was referring to the Greer Sensei. Okay. Always a great cook. Baby, is she ever. Her stews are unbelievable. You saying sounded like Linda Blair. Yes, John was just speaking anal retentive. That's what he was speaking. And you know how like the French think that Jerry Lewis is the greatest artist in the world? Or somewhere out there in another dimension, that's what they think of John Boy. Okay, good night, Light. I'm always glad to see you. Come back anytime and get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. And I look forward to seeing you or your message to Jane. And another good show, everyone. Thank you. And we needed those beans. Okay, I'm going to go too. Can we go into NTO state? What is that? We can do anything, actually. Yeah. But you state, okay. NTO, what is NTO? Remind me. I'm bad with acronyms. We can go into any state, any state of meditation, yes. Of course we can. It's really, all you have to do is breathe. And to breathe consciously, right? 4 in, 8 out, 4 in, hold for 4, 8 out, 4 in, 8 out. By then, your conscious mind is totally focused on your breath. But to breathe like that, you have to do. Right? Once you quiet all the other peripherals, there you are. Right? Then all the flotsam and jetsam, what you worry about, what you dealt with that day, all that kind of stuff comes up. And people go, "Oh, I can't meditate. I just can't, quiet my mind." No, this stuff is supposed to come up. And you know how you swipe shit out of your frame on your smartphone? That's what you do with all this crap. It shows up, just whoop, whoop, whoop. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't, you put it in the garbage can, you let it go. And that's why they have those memes on your phone. That's why they had to do a garbage can, because that's what you're supposed to be doing with the garbage. That's, why John did those 2 phone calls, because his mind is covered in garbage. So that's, and once you swipe all that stuff out of the way, what you get to is your imaginary mirror of your subconscious. That's where you dream. You get to dream time. That's why this show is called Dreamy Dreamland, right? Now it's dreamland. There's that screen right behind your eyelids. That's where, when you're sleeping, you have REM sleep. It's all over the place. Right? So if you breathe, go into meditative state by going into your subconscious, and you swipe all the distractions out of the way. There's the imaginary mirror that you then walk through, and you are in your your Akashic record, right? The library of your subconscious. To the left are your 3 guides, your librarian, your animal totem, and your guardian angel. And to your right are 9 doors. 9 of them are closed, and 1 that's open. One that's open is your superconscious mind, the sanctuary of your own choosing. Right? Well, back around 5 years ago, I used to do this guided meditation on the show pretty regularly. And this young man named Dragon, I think he's a young man, that was there all the time, really regular, really great guy, really a good part. And there was a couple of whatever you want to call those guys that live under a bridge. And I tried to get him out of the thing, and I knock Dragon off the show. And I don't know how to get him back. But before I did that, he was there, like I said, regularly for a good almost a year or so. I don't know how long, but he was great. I gave out my the Due to Wake 42 at Gmail. It was one of the first people who had a constant conversation. We talked about everything, right? And then he got my address and he started sending me care packages, right? And he started downloading my shows on thumb drives, right? So I had about 5 thumb drives with about 20 shows on of each. And so, I had them up in the shelf in my closet at the school, in the room I was staying at. And then John, the first time John threw me out, the guy who's this guy,
Gay man's asshole, dude.
and this guy, that was the guy who threw me out, and
Gay man's asshole, dude.
that's a level of his consciousness right there. Right? So something grabbed him, and he, threatened me, and he had gotten himself a mail order bride from Russia, and this whole thing went down, and she's out front, half naked in her mink stole, smoking 4 cigarettes a month. Like, I have to get out of here, and he's like, get out, get out, get out. So I said, John, let me pack something. Get out, right now. So I had to go. I went off. I had no place to go. I had no real money, but I had an amazing adventure. I was away for a month. It was great to be away from John. And I kept letting him, oh, please come back. Everyone misses you. Oh. Because, whenever I did a show on this thing, we get 70, 80,000 people watching, stories I told. So he's really good at this internet thing. So his knowledge of how to genre a audience was excellent. And my telling of stories was high level. And so together we were getting like 80,000 people a show. Right? And he was monetizing and taking the money to the bank, telling me, oh, you cost me money. Anyway, when I came back that time a month later, it was at a time where, okay, what I'm doing here, it's the same old same, and I'm kind of bored. And I tried to get something going, and nothing did. But I was comfortable. I could have stayed there, but comfort isn't everything. So, especially after you die as often as I have. So I went back and I looked at the room, and everything I had left there, John had rifled through. I said, John, why'd you go through all my stuff? I didn't do that. He's the only guy there. I didn't do that. And then I look up in the closet, and I had this box, and it had photos of my grandparents, my mother's parents, getting married, right, in Germany. And there were a lot of other pictures of Germany, Dusseldorf, and, before World War One. And they got married in the 1890s. And my birth certificate and my marriage certificate to my first wife, my training marriage, and a lot of pictures we took then. Some other near and dear stuff I had in this box was made by my grandfather, my mother's father. And I got a lot of my engineering technology genes from him. And it was this beautiful teak wood box, and everything was made out of wood, and it had ivory inlays, right, of a Celtic symbol and a Germanic symbol together, kind of interlocked. And one was love, and the other was trust. And John stole that. And he stole also all the stuff that Dragon had given me, and he had Dragon had written all these great letters to me about his dreams. And that when he was a little boy, he had this dream about. So when you go into your Akashic record and there's the 9 doors and the one door open, that's your your sacred place to go, your superconscious mind where God lives inside of you. Dragon at 9 drew the whole picture of going through the door of the breezeway, the steps up, the bridge over into where the Starry Night is, and into your imaginary place of your own choosing. And John stole that. I have no idea what he did with all that. And John does that all the time. He steals things when he's in the state of being Jimmy. And that was not nice. And, it's disappointing, and it's taken me forever to get my birth certificate. It's like, going to the dentist. So that's John. So that's the kind of purgatory John lives in, right? He constantly does things that totally, nobody wants to be around him. And he's done that his whole life. So, and he blames everybody else. He's kind of like Donald Trump without the billions of dollars. But he has visions of grandeur. And but see, all of those things. So I could never talk about it. And I don't really talk about it. But when he does stuff like that, I do. Because it gives background to John. It also gives background to why he is the canary in the spiritual coal mine for the rest of humanity, because that's where humanity is right now, in the state that John's in. Totally confused, totally bombarded by negative energy, totally doing really crappy things. All the wars, all the killing, all the death, we don't need to go into the dark ages, but that's where we're headed. Right? And the only way we can get out of it is go back to the beginning of this show and listen to what that guy was saying about we don't need to have our egos destroy the world. Right? Because we're right on the edge of taking that next step up the evolutionary ladder of our spirit. There are a lot of people like you guys who are watching the show who are getting the message of their spiritual evolution, right? And there are a lot of people on the internet that are doing all this guru emoji, just send me $10 for the prayer cloth, and that's fine. But there are a lot of other great people who are really putting out some great information that have a craving for bean soup now. Yes, yep. Nothing satisfies like bean soup. It really is the best, especially when it's made by a sweet old lady who's been doing it for the last 60 years of her life. And the other good thing she has is meatloaf. She has some of the best meatloaf I've ever had. I have a friend who has a restaurant nearby, and she's a good cook. She had a good friend who was like her cook. So she ran this restaurant up the side of the road in a burned out gas station, and she did pretty good because location. She was between 2 areas, and if you're taking that road, she was the only place to go get something to eat and use the bathroom, right? And you could buy eggs and milk there, and bread and a few other things. But mostly it was she always had a great meal for about $8. And really a lot. Like you got a big chunk of meatloaf, cabbage, bean soup, good cornbread. Now she moved into a big fancy town, and she got this building that had been a really nice restaurant before, and nobody had it for at least 6 years. And so, the guy who owned it, and he was probably tired of not making any rent, so she probably got a good deal. She got it, cleaned it out, fixed it up, started doing her gig. And for the first 2 years, it was like the same food that she had in her other store. So she ensured a really good clientele, got a clientele back. And her best thing was on Friday, she would have a big fish fry for like $10, all the fish you could eat, right? And that's a kind of thing in the South. There are a lot of, and that's kind of a thing. More than her who did that. That's kind of a thing, right? So anyway, he was back. It was great. I would go to that town when I had things to do, and there were some people I knew there. So that was, I'd go see them. I'd do those things I'd have to do. I would always have, especially if it was a Friday, I would go have fish fry. And she would let me take as much. I would come. She closed at noon, not noon, 2 and or 3, and I would go there around 1:30, and she had good Wi-Fi, and I'd go there and start looking at that and get a little something and something to drink, and then when the crowd is gone, but she still got a lot of fish back there, I would get all you can eat fish, right? And then she would bring me a plate of it, and then I said, when they bring that plate, give me another plate, right? And so they would be making that up. And by the time I had the third plate, I still had this plate kind of half eaten, this one 3/4 eaten. And then she'd bring me a third box with in a to-go box, a big to-go box. And she goes, I just cleaned off the stove. There's nothing left. And that was a sign that I could put it all in one box, she'd have a bag, I tie it up, and give her $8, right? And that was our little thing, because over the years, I did a lot of stuff for her. Right? So now she's really always packed, got a ton of people, and nothing, it's all mediocre. It's really sad to see a really good restaurant like that go to mediocrity and just go for the money. Right? The other side of the coin is I have this other friend. She came from Rhode Island, and she came down here with a boyfriend who came from this neck of the woods, and she had 3 kids from another guy, and they were little, and she came down there with him, and he kind of fizzled out. But she was living in this place called Elizabethton, and this building had been kind of a general store, right? And it kind of had a counter, like a drugstore counter kind of thing, right? And so she was living upstairs, and they had this thing down there, and they never used the thing downstairs at all, but they lived upstairs. So the guy kind of just disappeared, and she was left. She had a job someplace, and she had a little money, and so she opened a restaurant down there. It was called the Southern, right? Southern Restaurant, right? And she's from Rhode Island. And she, I think, worked at a real Southern restaurant and really got into that. So she had unbelievable, Southern fried steak, which is like a chicken fried. I don't know why they call it that. But anyway, and great cabbage and great everything that the South is known for, right? And great baked goods and great everything, right? And specials and other things that nobody else had. She had oysters, and she had a lot of, and everything was outstanding, right? So I get to know her, in the early O's. That's when she got here and started that. And I'd be in and out and in and out and in and out. And she had, as kids grow up, they become teenagers. She had issues and blah, blah, blah. And I would listen to all her problems, and, we'd talk about it. And I talked to the kids, and so she got a great mom. She's, breaking her back for, and she's doing pretty good. This is, you should not look at your mom as like just the cash cow / worker woman. You should look at this. You get into restaurants, You can make a fortune. You can really do good. So anyway, all three kids got into the biz, right? Waiting, cooking, doing the business end, and it grew bigger and bigger. It was right at a great point. They were making a lot. They were really the only really good restaurant in all of Elizabethton. I mean, they had McDonald's, they had this, they had that, but they had nothing like that. Everyone was going there, right? And they were good, great meal for a good price. It was great. That was one. They also had good Wi-Fi. That was one of my spots. If we go back to my shows, it was the counterculture. Right? This little counter. All of us old guys would be there cracking jokes on the show. It was quite good, So I have many levels of the show. I have 2,100 shows. They're all, and it's not all the same. I go through different cycles, right? Until this was that cycle, and it was loads of fun. And all the people who worked there would jump on the show, and the owner, she would come out, and she was the chef. She was the number one chef, and her daughter was number two chef, and the second daughter was the baker of the bunch. And the two girls would on and off, cook, bake, and waitress, right? And they were very attractive, so they got a lot of good tips. And so, after, in 2002, no, in 2020, what I'm saying, 2020, we got COVID, but it didn't really hit hard. I mean, it hit the county really was terrible. Where it hit hardest was the county jail because they did nothing about it, and these guys got sick, and they just let them die. And then the guys who were the jailers got sick, and they lived up there. And that was part of working at the jail. The county started the jail because the federal government gave money, and then the county took that money and built that jail, and then a corporation come in and paid, 200% more to buy the jail, and then they built a trailer park, and then next to it they built a trailer park as a assisted living, right? So the guards worked in the jail, and their wives were the nurses and caretakers of the old people. So the guys, the criminals, bring COVID into the jail. Everyone gets sick. The jailers get sick. They give it to their wives. The wives infect the old people. Old people die first. The older guys in jail die. So the majority of people who died in that county came from that. 900 people came from that. And it was all because of the county. Because when the guys started getting said, no, it's just a flu. It's not COVID, or blah, 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 blah. But anyway, I digress. But that's just the flavor of the level of unbelievable corruption, stupidity, etc., in the government around here. The state, the county, and our federal legislatures are all mutton heads like this, So anyway, she has this restaurant, and then COVID hits, and the rich people come and buy everything around here, right? Because they want to get out of California, they want to get out of Texas, they want to get out of Florida, they want to get, they're successful. It used to be great, but in Tennessee, it draws all these people because there is no income tax, so they come here for that. In the counties, property tax is like next to nothing. So they buy these properties, they build these houses, they're living there. And so the only real restaurant to eat in is this place. Now, when I met her in the early O's, and she was just starting, and it hit, right? She got the right thing. She started out, and then, it was really, because it was the only really great place to go eat, and it was as cheap as, in some ways, it was cheaper than McDonald's. It was like really amazing. So there was a good foundation of community support, right? And so she made money, and I was looking around. And I said, you you should buy this building. And she goes, yeah, the guy who owns it keep bugging me. I said, how much did he want to sell it to you for? She said, 25,000. I said, what do you make that in what, a month? And she giggles and she goes, no, not quite. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I said, well, buy this freaking building. Don't be stupid, buy it. So she does, right? So she buys it, fixes the upstairs more, and fixes the roof, and fixes all the stuff she's trying to get the land, because that's why the land is, what? But she's trying to get him to fix it, and he won't do it. And so he goes, why don't you just buy the building? And so how much? 25 grand. So she buys it for 25 grand. And then she buys that, and she's making really good money. And she goes, you got any more buildings to sell? He goes, yeah, I'll sell them all to you for like 200 grand. So she's making really good money. She has a good relationship with her bank. Interest rates are like zero. This is like after the great calamity. And she buys like all those buildings. And they're really, some of them are really nice, big, friggin' buildings. So then the COVID happens and things really die, but she still has a lot of money. And she buys, so she virtually buys the whole main street in Elizabethton, right? And this town used to be in turn of the century to the Depression. This was the hot spot. This was the Silicon Valley. So there were all these kind of beautiful, very 19th century buildings at 3 and 4 stories tall that were department stores. They're really quite amazing buildings. And so she starts turning them into Airbnbs. She is making a killing because all these rich people are coming to look for a place. They come up here to get their hair, and they stay in this nice beer and this nice restaurant right there. The town is pretty cool. And the college town is just over there that has a lot of stuff going on in it. And so she's, from 20, 21, 22, she is going gangs, but and her restaurant is like, but she does, she could knock out a wall and make it bigger, but she doesn't. She goes, I'm just going to leave it like this. It works. And if I do that, there's another little restaurant over there that actually does pretty good because all of the overflow, that's why Burger King and McDonald's are always right next to each other. And he's a good friend, and I wouldn't want to kick him out of his business, right? Because that wouldn't be right. Just to make money. I'm doing great. Why should I? Got all these Airbnbs making a lot of money. And she has these 2 other big buildings that like face the mountains. And, she's wondering what to do with those. And I said, you should turn those into condos and sell them for big bucks. I mean, big bucks. And she's thinking about that. So anyway, and then 21 goes into 22, that goes into 23. And by that time, it's all over. 90% of the 3 counties have been bought by large, basically mobster corporations that are just laundering their money from ill-gotten gains. Just like, kind of, they want to turn this whole area into Lake Tahoe. They've already made the deals with the Cherokee Indians. They already bought all the property around the lake was national forest. And there's this little thing that our Congress passed that you can trade land. And so that, this real estate company got our congressmen and senators to trade all the property around the lake for like this toxic waste dump in Idaho, good trade. And so, because they're going to build all these, glamorous hotels and anyway, so that's where this neck of the woods is going. And I've been telling people around here for 10 years this is where it was going. Right? So this woman, she's running it's still the best restaurant in town. And, there's a little guy next door, and there's a couple of beer joints down that have, beer food. But she has a really good restaurant. And she has about 50 chairs, and she moves 50 people an hour in and out, and each of those people pay $20 because they get the full Monty, right? And so that's 50 times 20. What's that? $2,000. Let's ask. I think it's that, or $500, one or the other. But let's ask Google. Google, what is 50 times 20?
50 times 20 is 1,000.
Never good at general math. Great at geometry. Okay, so she's making $1,000 an hour, and she is staying open 8 hours a day. She's making $8,000 a day. You take off maybe $1,200 for expenses, and she's making, what's that? That's $6,800 a day, and she's there pretty much. I think she takes Monday off, so she's there 6 days a week. Let's see. $1,600 times 6.
1,600 times 6 is 9,600.
Okay, that's not what I asked, but I'll clear that out. Here's the equal sign. That's almost $40,000, $40,800 a week. Right. So she gets a new boyfriend, and she takes this vacation to Italy, right? And her kids run the store, and it's 40 grand, $4,800 a week, right? So her expenses are probably, let's just say so she's making, let's just say 30 grand a week. That's pretty good, right? It's making, netting, taking home, right? And she's bought all this property that she's writing everything off on, and so she's doing pretty good on her taxes. And anyway, so it's in a business, so it's packed all the frigging time, and they got a line out there, and so there's the counter, and the rich people don't want to sit at because there's only 6 seats, 5 or 6, not many seats at the counter, right? So the counter seats mean if you want something, there's usually a seat there right away. The whole place is packed. There's usually a empty seat at the counter. Plus, she has a back, porch where the kitchen is, and that's where they load stuff in. So it's kind of more like a loading platform. Trucks can get there, right? And they can roll things up into the kitchen and into the walk-in cooler, and they got another walk-in cooler out there. But they also have at the end down there about 4 round tables with 4 or 5 chairs at each one, and they're all kind of busted up. That was the furniture that was in there 20 years ago. It's still good enough to be out there as porch furniture. And that's where the people take their breaks, smoke cigarettes, that kind of stuff. And the people like me can walk through the kitchen, because you have to walk through the kitchen from the thing to go to the bathrooms, right? So you can kind of go through the kitchen. I mean, they have a kind of hallway, but it's still in the kitchen, but it's anyway. I stop off the counter. I see one of the girls say, "Hey, I want sunset. I'm going to sit outside." If there was no seats at the counter, I sit out there. Still get Wi-Fi, and it's pretty out there. Actually, it's the back part of town. It's not all hustle bustle, and they have a whole bunch of seats out front where the rich people sit. Right. So anyway, that is the picture of the place, and that's I only go to that town to go see her and have a meal. I usually do it on a Sunday, and then the bookstore Jimmy runs. He's got this. He owns 4 buildings down there. His family has had them forever, and they're just stacked with vacuum cleaners and books. Again, I'm going to write a novel about all this. So, one day, there are all of these, important, people from California and Texas, driving Audis and Land Rovers and Humvees and blah, 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 and they're really upset because they have to wait online to get in and get their food. And they go in and talk because you can go to the bathroom. They know she's the boss. They start browbeating. And, okay, why'd you blow on? Let's come on seats. Let's put them on the street. What kind of place are we here? I could do so much better. She's making like 30 grand a week. I could do so much better. And so, after that happened, I mean, there was months of these people being here and being rude and terrible and her workers crying and stuff like that. And I'd have to go tell people, and why is that old guy telling me what to do and how to live my life? And what's he reading my palm for? Because 99% of everybody, when I go, let me look at your palm, they put it up. Only people who have really nasty things to hide won't do it. So anyway, she goes out, one day I'm there and there's not many people. She comes out on the porch and sits down with me and smokes a cigarette. She goes, I'm smoking cigarettes again. I haven't been smoking for 20 years. And I said, okay, so things have changed. You own half the town. Why do you even run this place? You run it because you love it. Do you love doing it anymore? Do your kids love doing it anymore? No, they want to go up and do their own thing that you've taught them well. They all went to college at ETSU. They all have a college degree. They can do anything they want. They got your money behind them. They have their own money that you've given them over the years and had them. Because a couple of those buildings she got and gave them the deed, And so because they're going to get it anyway. And she got this new boyfriend. She went to Italy and she was like a new woman. She looked like she was 20 years younger. I said, why don't you just go buy yourself a villa in Italy? And so, she gets this smile on her face and she goes, okay. So I, go up and do this and the thing's still running. But the next week I come by and she's out there and she's got this gigantic piece of paper that she's writing on, right? And I go in there and I say, and it's like a manifesto. You sucking fucking dickhead Californian, Texan, New Jersey, and think you're so fuck you shitheads. I do not have to serve you anymore. What she did was she gave everyone who worked there a nice chunk of change, right? And said, you want to start a restaurant somewhere? I'll help you do it, like in that area. And two of them did, One started a Mexican restaurant. The other guy started didn't name it what that place, but basically same kind of food. In the other end, right, going towards Damascus on 91. Again, perfect spot, old gas station. There is, it had a little restaurant in the back, and he just, with the gas station thing, the 1950s thing, with the big windows on one side and the things going up there, and the garage doors with glass in them. So he turns, he pulled the lifts out, and the whole thing's a restaurant, and you can in summertime open up the big garage doors and move people that had seats out there. Perfect. The guy's doing great. And a bunch of the people went to that place, and the other people went to the Mexican restaurant, and they turned it into a collective. I told them about having the restaurants I had that were collectives that everybody owned a chunk of and were part of and felt good about it. And they did that. And she bankrolled them to do that, right? And so she has kept that restaurant and doesn't rent it out. And there's this big sign, you motherfucking California, blah, 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 blah. And it's right there, and you drive by it, and there it is. You can't miss it, right? She just totally told him to get fucked, right? Eat shit. I mean, she really, the guys from the city of that's in Rhode Island that are kind of like Southie Boston type folk, that part of her came out, and she just let them have it. And now she's living in a nice little villa in Italy with her new husband, who's about 20 years younger than he is, and they have a nice little restaurant in a nice little town they're in, and everyone loves them. They've learned Italian. He knew Italian, and that's why they went there for that vacation. And that's a good story I'm going to end the show with. It's been almost 3 hours. And And that's the choice we have. We're staring down a double-barreled, of 1984 Brave New World, um, you know, Handmaid's Tale, Hunger Games. That's we're very close to that, right? And if we go down that trail, we'll be at it for at least 100 years. It doesn't sound too fun. But what that other lady did, so she still got all those buildings. She had, I guess, for the election, the 24 election, she took her two big, um, that had been department stores and turned them into 18 condos that she sold for, I think, almost $1 million a piece. That's how much the real estate had jumped up. And she bought those buildings like, 200 grand for like 7 of them. And she probably put in, her son, who's a business guy, has been running the real estate. He got a real estate license, and he's trying to take them all to the cleaners. And that's the American dream. That's how it should be run. But she came to that little town in Tennessee with this broken down Tennessee guy, and she was not that far away from becoming a meth mom. But the guy left. He probably had his last shreds of his better part. He hit the road leaving her there, where they were had a good place up there. The rent was little. She was paying it by the job she had, and she decided to do what she knew best and start a restaurant. Right? That's the American dream. Well, that's not on the horizon for people like that. But it could be if those billionaires were not going to get another $2 trillion tax break. That's the next. He's done all this whoop-de-doo stuff with presidential things just to confuse and confound. And his next big thing he's going to do is put in the works of not a $2 trillion, but a $10 trillion tax break for corporations, because we're going to bring all the corporations back to America. They want it to pay any taxes. We're going to put, tariffs on everybody, so everyone only buys American stuff. It'd be great to see America go to war with NATO. Anyway, so let's work for the better way out of this, right? And which we can do very easily. Not going to be hard. The lady did okay. She sure did. That's, I think, going to be my next novel. The lady did okay. Thank you, Jane. The lady did okay. So, Janie Poo, can you send me your email right now so I can see it pop up and put it in a place that I can get at it and send you some stuff right now? Yeah, go watch let's see how this thing is doing. Just don't like the way the iPhone is laid out. It's more confusing. I don't have the iPhone in my gene pool. Where is Google? You'd think Google would be right up front. But I can't find it. Okay, let's use this since I can do it easily. 1984, the movie made in England in the 60s. This is it. 1984. It's a 1950 British science fiction film based on George Orwell. 19. recall, but it wasn't 19. Google made a big mention. It says 1949 novel of the same name. Okay, enough of that.
On the devastation wrought by the atomic raids of 1965, three great police states rose to divide the world: Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia. Atomic weapons were abolished, but not war itself. Only by maintaining the strain and tension of continual conflict could the ruling parties enforce absolute power. London, with its bomb-proof ministries, became capital of Airstrip 1, a province of Oceania. Take cover, everybody. Take cover, everybody. Special bulletin from the Ministry of Peace. Eurasian rocket bombs are approaching London. Take cover. Take cover, everybody.
Kind of looks like the Gaza Strip. Kind of looks like Ukraine. It's the smartest thing to do to take cover by a glass box.
sorry for an important announcement. The Ministry of Peace is happy to report that thanks to the vigilance of our gallant interceptors, no Eurasian rocket bomb was able to reach targets of any importance. We continue now with our regular broadcast.
Has nothing to hide. Have your way. President? Yes, President. 6748 FW. Regulation 6040. Outer party members will always wear identification badges when going in public places. And Smith, don't forget again. All right, I'm ready. Hello, Jim. Right.
So you can have a drink, you can have a smoke, go out with friends.
Doesn't happen. Second line, also larger than at any previous week.
Well, go watch that movie. It's a very good representation of where we're heading for. How is you doing? Reading from Japar. Here's Swami. He's our traveling boy. Whoever in Mayor or Mumbai. And if not, why not? Well, when I traveled, those places weren't quite on my list, but I would say they'd be fun to go to now. What's Mumbai like? Tell us about Mumbai. Where it's at, where it's located, what's going on there. Swami, can I call you up? Will you answer the phone? I'm going to give it a try anyway. I'm going to let you take over the show, Swami. It's not ringing. Calling mobile. Nope, didn't go through. Well, I'm gonna say goodnight. I'm getting tired. I was gonna let you take the show on for the next hour or two, but I'm just gonna go to bed. Okay, what time is it now? Yeah, it's a good time. Okay.